Immortal Cultivation in the Cybernetic Milky Way. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 176. Ling Guards. This is Madame Rose's laboratory. Nanling saw the whole process of the birth of the Feather Guard and also saw his own growth record of that year. To be honest, Nanling's mood was very complicated. In this laboratory, everyone also saw some of the things that happened that year with Madame Rose's authority. There are video records here. At the time, Nanling was already a small baby out of the culture dish and was undergoing a physical examination. Well, Nanling felt extremely resentful when he saw Madame Rose playing with his little Juju in the screen. He felt that he was socially dead. Can we skip this part? He groaned in pain. Madame Rose said unhappily, "It doesn't matter, no outsiders see it." Nanling looked at Mo and saw her standing there quietly, but he seemed to be able to see through her eyes shining. He turned his head to change the subject and complained, "You also made a belly button for me?" Madame Rose said, "Is your craftsmanship good? This can make you look more like an ordinary person. I even think that you are so outstanding now because of this belly button." Madame Rose's brain circuit is really tricky, and Nanling can't resist it at all. He touched his belly button and thought to himself, no wonder it looks like a rose, it turned out to be the work of my mother. The more he talked about the laboratory, the more embarrassed he became. Nanling decided not to talk about it. He said, "Since your memories have been recovered, why don't we find a terminal with higher authority to explore more information?" Mrs. Rose nodded and said, "Yes, it's better to know what happened on this ship. I always have a feeling that I came to this ship after modifying my memory for this secret." Nanling felt that his mother would become a fool sooner or later because of her disordered memory. But the good news is that his beautiful photos of childhood finally don't have to be exposed. Suddenly he paused and asked, "You didn't leave a backup, did you?" Mrs. Rose said naturally, "I came to find my memory. This kind of video information is the carrier of my memory. It would be too cruel for you not to let me leave a backup." Nanling was sad and didn't speak. He didn't notice that Mo's eyes flashed before his eyes, and then he showed a mysterious smile. "Everyone can keep a little backup. This is precious information about Shionen's Cup stage." The three of them left the laboratory and continued to go deeper into the new recruit camp. This is one of the core points of the Feather Guard, so there must be a high authority terminal. It is not difficult to find it. AI Changshen has pointed out the location for them. The only problem is that there is a guard there. She is a female soldier wearing a Feather Guard uniform, with 2 scars on her face and her entire left hand replaced with a mechanical arm. Judging from her dress, she is probably a military officer in the Feather Guard. She sat calmly on the seat next to the terminal, with the same feather spear as other Feather Guards beside her. Her scarred body looked like an unparalleled warrior who had experienced hundreds of battles. "Golden core cultivation?" Nanling asked with difficulty. Just looking at the aura displayed by the female general of the void sitting there, he felt very shocked. In comparison, the golden core of Boss Fanny is simply too watery and has no momentum at all. "We are going to fight her." Nanling was a little unconfident. He is just a foundation-building cultivator, how could he fight with such a fierce person? It is unwise to force a fight when you know you can't win. Nanling was thinking about it, and the female military marquise had already looked over. Her eyes were cold and dead, like the cold gaze of the dead from the sticks, which make people's backs stand up. "She seems to be able to see us?" Nanling asked. Mo said, "Maybe the Jindan cultivators are different after they become virtual. However," Madame Rose said with certainty, "she can definitely see us and even hear us talking." Nanling couldn't help but shout loudly, "I'm General Ling Yu." As a result, the female military marquise seemed to break the defense, and she said, "You are not." Nanling said, "I am, the AI here admits it." The female military marquise said coldly, "Changshen betrayed the Immortal Lord. He is a rebellious AI and is not trustworthy. The real general is stationed in front of the Immortal Lord's retreat, and you are just a new soldier who is wandering outside." Although it was a female voice, it was cold and sonorous, like a golden sword and iron horse and 1,000-year-old ice. Nanling knew he had no chance after hearing this. This guy's logic was self-consistent, and he seemed to be the kind of person who would use physics to persuade others if he disagreed with him. He should not offend him. He turned to Mo and Madame Rose and said, "Why don't we leave? This is obviously a dead end." More importantly, he found that his spiritual furnace was already running out of money. This environment consumed a lot of the spiritual power stored in his spiritual furnace. Mo nodded. She also felt that there was no need to take risks, or come back next time when she was more prepared. Madame Rose didn't seem to be happy. She obviously wanted to continue to explore the answers here. But the fact was that the female military marquis in front of him didn't seem to be easy to deal with. At least this exploration should end. She said, "Anyway, I have achieved my goal of regaining my memory. You can decide what to do next." Nanling immediately felt relieved and said, "Okay, let's go." However, the female military marquis snorted and said, "You retreat without a fight. The courage of our Lingyu guards is gone, right?" Nanling retreated while saying, "Knowing that you can't win and just going to die, that's not bravery, that's stupidity." The female military marquis said, "If you defeat me, I will admit that you were a general." Nanling said, "I can't win, at least not now." He was very sure of this. The female military marquis stopped talking. She suddenly stood up, holding her Lingyu spear in her hand and then thrusting the spear forward. At this moment, Nanling only felt that the air around him was shrinking rapidly around the tip of the spear, which actually prevented his body from responding. This shot was definitely not something that a level 8 spearmanship could do. Nanling took a deep breath, and his energy flowed into his skull, and then he immediately responded. He activated the flowing wind talent, and the airflow that trapped him around him was suddenly dispersed and then reorganized, and then fell into his control. He also fired his gun to counterattack. At this moment, the gun tip touched, but actually did not touch. Instead, a group of the sharpest spiritual energy at the gun tip was spinning and dissipating. The spiritual power of the female military marquis was sharper, while Nanling's spiritual power was more tenacious. Therefore, when the two sides touched, Nanling did not collapse at the first touch, and even the powerful force transmitted by the other party did not seem so strong to him. His body shook for a while, and then his body, which had been continuously strengthened by his spirit and spiritual power, actually stood up. Then the female military marquis put away her gun and took 2 steps back, and Nanling also took 3 steps back involuntarily. After all, he was much worse in cultivation. Just now, he could be said to be fully focused on resisting that shot, and unknowingly, the spiritual power in his body had been consumed by more than 10%. This consumption speed was really shocking to him. Fortunately, the spiritual power in the spiritual furnace was replenished in time, and his body was also refining the replenished spiritual power at a high speed. However, this caused his spiritual furnace to lose more. The female military marquis said coldly, "You can fight, why not?" Nanling looked at his own condition, and then said calmly, "I have to devote a lot of energy to maintain the wind shield technique. Under this situation, I will definitely not be able to beat you. I don't want to become the same as you." He was very honest. The female military marquis was silent for a while. Then she returned to her seat and said, "Well, wait until you reach the Jindan stage, and I will recognize you as a general if you beat me. I, the heroic military marquis of Lingyu Guard, will wait for you." Nanling didn't know what to say for a moment. He could feel that the heroic military marquises around him actually hoped that he could beat him. Chapter 177 Temporary Departure. The 3 of them withdrew from the new recruit camp of the Feather Guard in a panic. They were not beaten. In fact, except for the Inward Army Marquis of the Feather Guard, they did not encounter any obstacles. After Nanling blocked the Inward Army Marquis's shot, they were released. What really made them anxious was that they found that their spirit furnaces had different degrees of abnormalities. It was true that they had their own ways to resist the virtual essence, but their spirit furnaces had to continuously absorb and output spiritual power. When the spirit furnace gradually began to be unable to make ends meet, it could no longer resist the erosion of the virtual essence and had actually begun to change. Among them, Nanling was the most seriously eroded, because he had increased the use of the spirit furnace when fighting with the Inward Army Marquis before, and his windshield technique had some flaws. He only reacted when he felt that the essence in his body was boiling and was greatly depleted. He quickly removed the spirit furnace loaded on his chest, and then ran away quickly with the support of Mo and Madame Rose. The 2 of them also found that their spirit furnaces had been eroded to a certain extent, but not as seriously as Nanling's. It can be seen that if they want to conduct a thorough exploration in this place, their current preparations are completely insufficient. After rushing out of the gate of the Antarctic Changshan in the rapid mode of the whirling wingsuit, Nanling and the other 2 breathed a sigh of relief when they saw the huge and majestic gate slowly closing again. Of course, they are not completely safe yet. After hurriedly returning to the purple iris, Mo and Madame Rose hurriedly untied the armor on Nanling's body, and then pulled open the clothes on his chest to check his condition. Tai Long was shocked when he saw this. Is his good brother Nanling going to lose his most precious thing today? But obviously he thought too much. Mo and Madame Rose only checked Nanling's physical condition to see if he was eroded by the virtual substance. Nanling looked at the socket on his chest that was exposed after the spirit furnace was removed, and said, "Fortunately, only part of the material of this socket was virtualized, and there is nothing else. And this virtual substance is not a virus. Without the source, its virtualization will stop, and it will not cause more damage to my body. In fact, there was still damage, but it was all resisted by his vitality. At least before his essence is consumed, this virtual substance cannot erode his body." Mo said with a serious expression. "Then you are too careless. I will go to count the inventory and see if I can make you a temporary spirit furnace and a carrier device." Nanling was quite surprised that Mo could do this. Seeing him like this, Mo smiled and said, "In the first 3 years of the instrument-making academy of the Chugyu Academy, you have to learn how to make a spirit furnace, a wisdom core and an auxiliary instrument. I have mastered them in 2 months. Although what I made for you will not meet your needs as well as the Zifm set, it is enough for a temporary use. When we get to the ancient domain, I will find you a better 3-piece set. In fact, your current 3-piece set is no longer suitable for you." What does this mean? Is he forcing him to eat soft rice? Nanling was quite unhappy. He felt that he had dignity. So he said, "I won't use your money for nothing." Mo nodded calmly and said, "I understand. I will put it on the account and you will pay it back later." Nanling reluctantly agreed. But the debts were getting bigger and bigger, and he found that he had no confidence to pay them off. How about just lying down and being a dead heartbeat? He quickly dismissed this idea. He was still a man with dignity, how could he do such a shameless thing? The purple iris began to leave the dark airspace. It was still glorious all the way, but everyone was very quiet on the way back. Finally, Madame Rose said, "Are you going to the ancient domain next?" Nanling nodded and said, "Almost, things here have come to an end." It was just an end. In his heart, he would come back here sooner or later. Because he really felt the pressure he had put on this place. Even the heroic military marquis who kept saying that he did not recognize him as General Ling Yu, she also let him go when she stabbed him. She did not want Nanling to become the same as her, and she obviously retained a clear sense of self. But it was precisely because of this that she seemed extremely sad, because she had a clear sense of self, but was still trapped on the Antarctic Changsheng and could not be freed. Although Nanling did not have access to a higher-level terminal to obtain key intelligence this time, he still had many guesses. He felt that the power of virtual essence might have first appeared on this immortal ship. The senior executives on the Antarctic Changsheng must have been studying this power, but now it seems that this power is completely out of control. However, these are not what he can explore at this time. He must wait until he reaches the Golden Core stage or even the Nascent Soul stage to come back and find out. After all, they could only be considered as peripheral explorations before, and the real core secrets of this immortal ship are far from being revealed. Nanling said, "What about you? Where are you going next?" Madame Rose said, "I have recovered my memories on the Changsheng immortal ship, and the next step is to find earlier memories. Since the Dai Ting organization was able to find me at the beginning, I have to go back to the Dai Ting headquarters once, maybe I can get some information. You can find a planet or space station to drop us off on the way, and then we will say goodbye." Nanling was a little disappointed when he heard this, and he found that he still cared about it after all. But Mo suddenly said, "In that case, why don't you go to Chugxing together first, and then leave with this ship? This should be more convenient." Madame Rose's eyes jumped and said, "This is your spaceship, and you're just giving it to me." Mo said frankly, "Madam, why do you have to test me with this? It's okay to give this ship to you. I think with your capacity, you won't care about a mere purple iris." Madame Rose shook her head and said, "No, I actually like this ship very much. If you give it to me, I'll be very happy." As if she thought of something, Mo's face couldn't help but blush. But she still said coldly, "Then I'll give it to you." As soon as the voice fell, she had handed over all the authority neatly. Really super execution. Madame Rose said, "You are really quick. By the way, how are we going to settle down after arriving at Chugxing? Is this because I'm worried?" Mo said, "I will find a good place for Xiaonan to live." Madame Rose asked, "You want him to live out there alone?" Mo's expression froze at the time, but then he changed his mind and felt that this was indeed inappropriate, so he said, "No, I have my own property on Chuxing," which is enough for him to settle down. Madame Rose nodded and said with satisfaction, "Well, it's good to live out alone. You two should live a good life and not be disturbed by others." Nanling felt a little trembling when he heard this, because he found that Mo's expression was very cold, as if she was not satisfied with this statement. But he remembered that his sister Mo could not be judged by common sense, so he entered his mind with his spirit to observe her emotional aura. Well, pink. Chapter 178 Mysterious Mother. After nearly a month of sailing, the Purple Iris entered hyperspace flight. This hyperspace flight will last for 3 months until it reaches the Chugi star. Such a long voyage certainly cannot be endured sitting on the bridge. Everyone came to their resting cabin, fixed their bodies in the most comfortable posture, and entered the hyperspace flight after getting ready. Nanling was lying down, and suddenly his mind moved, trying to mobilize his own essence. This was something he had tried before. The essence circulated in the body, and wherever it passed, it could restore some vitality to the body frozen in the hyperspace. But this was not his real purpose. He eventually introduced the essence into his brain, allowing his brain to be strengthened by the essence again. And it was at this moment that his thinking ability was extremely enhanced. Then he opened his eyes and looked around, and he felt that the bizarre scenes in the hyperspace around him did not seem so mysterious and difficult to understand. He saw that the light spots floating around him seemed to be some kind of entity, some like bubbles, and some like mirages. In short, it was quite interesting. At this time, his Z communication jumped, but it was from Mo. "Don't bother me, I have something to do." Was she telling Nanling not to bother her? But Mo had already formed a stereotype in Nanling's mind that she was hypocritical. He asked, "What is your sister going to do?" Sure enough, the other side immediately replied, "I am studying the admission qualifications of Chugi College. I plan to register you for admission after we arrive at Chugi Star. The time is a bit tight. When we arrive, it will be almost the start of the new semester. I must prepare in advance and complete the process as soon as possible." Sure enough, she was waiting for Nanling to ask. Nanling asked with a smile, "Then what should I prepare?" Mo immediately transferred a bunch of course materials and said, "There are still 3 months left. You should familiarize yourself with the content of these cultural courses. There will be exams at the time." Nanling's face was a little distorted in the hyperspace at the time. He asked, "What is the point of this exam? After all, any knowledge can be quickly mastered with Z." Mo said, "Of course, the test is a practical course. Z can indeed help us master knowledge quickly, but in practice it tests one's own ability." Nanling asked with interest, "What is the main test?" Mo said, "The content of the test will keep changing, but it will generally test some comprehensive things. Of course, if you have outstanding specialties, you can also apply for special tests." Nanling pondered for a while, and he admitted, "Well, I don't think I really have any specialties, so a comprehensive test is better." Mo immediately said, "Okay, I will tell you about the aspects that will be involved in the comprehensive test. You must listen carefully. In terms of saying one thing and thinking another, Mo is definitely a leader." She was asking Nanling to stop bothering her before, but now she doesn't seem to be busy with her own things at all. Nanling understood this tacitly, and studied together very cooperatively. It is normal for a couple to discuss learning matters together, right? And the knowledge that Mo has refined is indeed easy to understand. Anyway, he understands it at a glance. Moreover, the two of them were always able to have in-depth discussions on more profound or broader extension levels. This kind of mutual understanding of each other's thinking was really wonderful. In fact, this kind of understanding had existed for a long time, but it seemed to have become more after the official announcement. To be honest, perhaps it was for this reason that Mo agreed to Fanny's whimsical solution. However, this solution was indeed effective. At least they could return to Chuxing openly without worrying about the threats of the previous forced marriage. Anyway, no matter what, Mo was very satisfied with the current situation. She and her family could be free from external coercion, and she also got a partner she could trust. Well, a partner who was devoted to Taoism and abstinence from sex. But just when Nanling was studying seriously, he seemed to suddenly sense something. Mainly because he had been attacked during the previous hyperspace voyage, he installed many monitoring devices in the room where his body was sleeping, focusing on rigorousness. At this time, one of his detectors sounded an alarm, detecting that the hatch of his room was opened. Nanling was very surprised by this, because his own authority to this cabin did not show that the door was open, which was obviously hacked. His consciousness quickly returned to his body, and at the same time, the spirit entered his brain, allowing him to open his eyes while his body was frozen. Then, he saw that the door of his cabin was indeed open. And in the colorful spots of light, there seemed to be a shadow at the door of the cabin, and walked towards his room step by step. Oh my God, did he encounter a hyperspace ghost? At that moment, a huge feeling of uneasiness seized his mind, making him want to move his body immediately. At least he had the power to resist. So his whole body was full of spirit, and with the return of consciousness, he tried to move his body as if he was in a nightmare. It was very difficult. But the spirit in his body vibrated again and again like waves, and finally at the moment when the shadow at the door appeared in front of him, his whole body sat up, and then he was ready to call a wind spell. At this moment, the black shadow at the door appeared. But she saw her long wine red hair lazily falling, and her tall and voluptuous figure stepped over the threshold and walked in. Madame Rose looked at Nan Lin, who was sitting up in shock from her dying illness, in surprise, and then chuckled and said, "I didn't expect that you could also move in hyperspace. You are worthy of being my good child." Nan Lin had originally spent a lot of energy to struggle to sit up. As a result, when he saw that it was his nominal aunt and actual mother, he immediately lay back down speechlessly, looked over with resentment, and sent a message with his intelligence core. "Why did you come here suddenly?" Madame Rose said, "Oh, it seems that you haven't completely achieved free movement in hyperspace. Yes, there are very few people with this talent. I guess you can do this because of my genes." Nanling expressed his disbelief. This must not be true, because he clearly knew that he could do this by relying on his abundant energy and strong will. Mrs. Rose didn't care what he thought and continued, "This trip will last for 3 months. I don't want to stay alone for 3 months. Besides, we will say goodbye again in 3 months. I'm reluctant to leave." As she said that, she sat down at the head of Nanling's bed, stretched out her hand to comb Nanling's hair and said, "Black hair is the hair color of the Feng family. Why didn't you follow my hair color?" Nanling was speechless. The main thing was that this was not something he could control. He could send a message. "Then I died." Mrs. Rose laughed and said, "That's not necessary. After all, I suspect that my hair color is not original." "Very good, this is really Mrs. Rose's style. Okay, you should sleep peacefully, and spend more time with your good sister in the consciousness space. She is a good woman. I just need to watch you quietly." As she said that, she gently touched Nanling's forehead. Nanling felt that his consciousness was constantly falling deeper. He felt too magical and confused. What kind of cultivation was Madame Rose? Why could she move in hyperspace so easily with her body? What was her power? He was in a trance and returned to the data space where Mo taught him. "What's wrong with you?" In Mo's opinion, he was just absent-minded. Nanling shook his head in distress and said, "Nothing, I just thought of Madame Rose." He could see through the surveillance in the room controlled by the intelligence core that he was lying with his head resting on Madame Rose's knees, and she was humming a nursery rhyme that he couldn't understand. But no matter what, his consciousness could not return to his body. He felt that his body was now Madame Rose's doll, which was really speechless and helpless. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 179 Old Friends Reunited. During the hyperspace flight, Nanling's consciousness has been following Mo to learn various courses. She is not bored by this, but is more and more excited, and seems to be tireless in destroying others. Nanling's body fell into the hands of Madame Rose. This white and beautiful body was wantonly played by Madame Rose, which was really sad and lamentable. He felt that his mother must have some mental illness. Well, this is a woman who enjoys playing with his memory. Isn't it common sense that she has mental problems? Nanling was a little worried. He inherited Madame Rose's genes. Will there be any genetic diseases? After 3 months of such worry, the purple iris finally got out of the hyperspace flight. The first thing he did when he woke up was to check if there were any parts missing from his body. Fortunately, there seemed to be no problem. There was no one else in the room, but the faint scent of roses in the air still told Nanling that someone had stayed here with him for a long time. Then he looked at the table in his room, and saw a booth there, on which several photos were played in a loop. They were all group photos of him and Madame Rose. He quickly flipped through them, and fortunately there were no photos of him changing into strange clothes. Fortunately, there was no further social death, just an ordinary group photo. Well, this is the separation of mother and son, so take more photos as a souvenir. Nanling thought this was quite normal. As a result, when he came to the bridge, he found that Mo and Madame Rose were actually huddled together, whispering to some video materials, and occasionally chuckling or sighing, which made him feel uneasy. He hurriedly went up to take a look, and fortunately, it was not the images of him being posed in various postures in the past 3 months, but various photos and videos of him in the welfare home when he was a child. Wait, how can there be such information? He suddenly realized that the welfare home where he grew up was equipped with many surveillance cameras, and his video materials must be stored by Madame Rose. Especially when he saw a photo of him peeing under the monitor in the corner, his eyes went dark and he was about to faint. He was dying. Seeing him come in, Mrs. Rose quickly put away the information and said to Mo Kong, "Well, I've shared all the good stuff with you, just keep it for yourself." Then she said to Nanling, "Don't be so desperate, we are all your closest people, look at what happened to these past images, this is the joy of life." Nanling looked at Mrs. Rose silently, confirming that this was a joy built on his pain. He sighed and said, "Aunt, we're about to reach Chuxing. Meaning, I can finally say goodbye to you." To be honest, Nanling can't wait. Before he didn't have a mother, he felt like a grass, although he was swaying in the wind, but he was also free. Now that he has a mother, he feels like a treasure, but it's a pity that he is a conspicuous treasure. Seeing this, Mo smiled softly with her hands covering her mouth, and the slightly raised corners of her mouth revealed between her fingers looked very touching. She said, "Madam, I wonder when we can meet again next time." Madame Rose said, "Wait until I regain my memory, wait until you have grown up again, and wait until we are fully prepared, then we can go explore the immortal boat of immortality together again, how about that?" This means that the South Pole Immortality boat is going to be used as a long-term copy. What's more interesting is that this copy key is Nanling. Nanling nodded and said, "Okay, after I reach the Golden Core, I will definitely find that heroic military Marquis to fight again." He also has a temper. The previous lightning-fast confrontation made him know that the opponent is really strong. He might not be able to survive 10 moves under the opponent's gun. But he was not convinced and felt that he would not lose if he hit the same cultivation level. Mo also nodded and said, "Then it's a deal." At this time, the intelligence cores of Nanling and Mo both showed information prompts at the same time. But it was Fanny in the hyperspace active group who was shouting, "Hey you guys, come in. Sister Liji and I are here to pick you up." Mo said, "We're here, and we're queuing up at the airport of Chugiv Star." Fanny said, "Why queue? I'll give you an identification code, just come directly." As soon as the voice fell, an identification code was sent to the group. Mo then entered the identification code into the bridge of the Purple Iris, and the next moment the airport gave the Purple Iris a special reception, allowing them to enter the port directly through the VIP channel. This is the beauty of power, it always has to reflect something different. After the spaceship entered the port and stopped steadily, Nanling and Mo walked out of the cabin with their luggage. Mo invited her. "Madam, don't you want to come to Chuxing?" Madame Rose stood at the door of the cabin and waved her hand with a smile, saying, "No need, I have been to this planet before, I will leave after the spacecraft has been resupplied with supplies. Speaking of which, your Miss Fanny is really powerful. She has prepared all the conventional supplies at this berth. With the size of the Purple Iris, I'm afraid that the supply can be completed in 15 minutes. Mo smiled and said, "After all, this is a dock for large starships to berth." Nanling waved and said goodbye. "Auntie, goodbye." Madame Rose rolled her eyes at him unhappily, as if blaming him for being so impatient to say goodbye to her. However, Nanling couldn't wait to turn around and leave, and didn't even bother to look at her for a second, which made her want to scold him as a bastard. This bastard is really cold and heartless. Then she looked at the bastard's attentiveness around his wife, and she confirmed that this was a bad boy who forgot his mother after having a wife. Did Nanling forget his mother now that he had a wife? In his heart, he was always the same. He had a mother but he had not forgotten his wife. After all, his wife was his biggest creditor. The delicious soft rice was often forced into his mouth, which made his conscience suffer. They walked out of the dock area for about 10 minutes. Suddenly, the engine of the ship behind them roared. They looked back together and saw that the Purple Iris had slowly taken off. At this time, Nanling stopped and silently watched the spaceship with the flower language of family go away. Mo stood quietly beside him, just accompanying him and not saying anything. Then Nanling turned around and said, "Let's go." Boss Fanny must have been waiting for a long time. Mo was immediately excited when he heard this. They came to the waiting room outside and saw Fanny had already pounced on her, hugged Mo and shouted, "Mo, I miss you so much." She was very happy. Nanling found himself being completely ignored but didn't pay much attention to it. He just looked at a strange and intellectual older sister who was walking behind Fanny and asked, "Who is this?" The older sister grinned and chuckled, "You don't recognize me?" Nanling was speechless. "Aunt Liji, did you change your face?" "Oh no, did you change your head again?" Even though he had known Liji for a long time, he was still a little uncomfortable with the situation of suddenly changing his whole body. Liji chuckled and said, "Well, this prosthesis was provided to me by the Special Service Department. It has stronger intelligence capabilities and firewalls, which is better than my previous head." Nanling nodded and said, "That's good." Before he finished speaking, he was attacked. Fanny, who was originally hanging on Mo, probably felt that she had appeased Mo, and then jumped on Nanling again and said, "Xiaonan, I miss you so much." "Very good, scumbag." Chapter 180. Ancient Star. Nanling really didn't expect that boss Fanny would actually hang out with him. She was really not reserved at all. But the boss could be casual, but he had to make it clear. He quickly pushed Fanny away and said, "Boss, please respect yourself." Fanny was stunned for a moment, then said with a smirk, "Oh, it's different with your wife watching you. You know to avoid suspicion." "Is this avoiding suspicion?" "This is avoiding danger." Nanling glanced at Mo, who was as cold as ice, and especially saw that her emotional aura was glowing red at this time, and deeply understood that he did nothing wrong at this time. Fanny smiled and said, "Okay, Mo is actually angry, I won't tease you anymore, my little brother." Nanling. ... Where is the little brother? Mo's mind was moved, she asked. "But has Master Chen found the legal basis for Xiaonan's identity?" Fanny nodded and said, "My father has found the information. That Immortal King is indeed a famous ancestor of our branch. In fact, our branch has risen because of that Immortal King. And the Immortal King established the Changsheng Society, originally to recruit talented people in the family to serve as the Feather Guards. But the Changsheng Society was responsible for major pioneering missions at the time, and the loss rate of the Feather Guards was quite alarming. After that, they simply trained their own personnel. But these trained Feather Guards suffered for the Ge family members. After discussion of the Elders' Council, it was decided to give the Feather Guards the same identity as the Ge family's side branch personnel." Fanny looked at Nanling with a smile and said, "So you understand, right? You actually have the identity of a Ge family side branch in the ancient domain, so you are not really penniless. And it's a side branch that is very closely related to me, so you are my younger brother." Nanling complained in his heart, "I'm your ancestor." Mo seemed to be able to hear Nanling's mumbling in his stomach. He looked at him strangely and said, "Okay, don't stand in the airport. Help us settle down." Upon hearing this, Liji immediately picked up the luggage of the two people, one in each hand, and then carried them away. Anyway, she is a cyborg, so she doesn't care about this little weight at all. Fanny cheered, "Okay, let's help Xiaonan decorate the room together." After saying that, they turned around and walked out together. Chuxing is a medium to large rocky planet with 125 times the standard gravity. The airport where they are now is located in the outer space orbit of Chuxing, which is responsible for connecting to and from spacecraft. When they came outside, there were rows of space elevators that could directly reach Chuxing. These space elevators are not connected to the ground with any physical ropes, but are directly controlled by gravity. Nanling is quite familiar with this kind of thing. It is not the first time that he has used this device to travel between the surface of the planet and the outer space. There are many space elevators or gravity delivery cabins here, and there is no need to queue up at all. Everyone just found a cabin and walked in. And there are no additional fixed facilities, but there are 2 rows of 6 seats in this cabin. Then the hatch closed, and Fanny snapped her fingers lightly, and the space elevator suddenly left the airport and fell to the surface of Chugi Star. But Nanling unexpectedly did not feel any gravity pressure. He even thought that he would be in a state of weightlessness for a short time under this accelerated fall, but he did not expect that he would be safe in this delivery cabin and could even stand up and walk around at will. He asked in surprise, "Is this a gravity constant system?" Fanny smiled proudly and said, "After all, this is Chugi Star. Okay, I know this is your hometown, and the high technology is awesome. The gravity delivery cabin therein is falling rapidly along a set trajectory under the gravity rail, passing through the atmosphere, and then falling to the city below. This is a very large city, but Nanling thought it should be a place full of high-tech facilities with tall buildings, but he did not expect that there are no tall buildings in this city except for limited buildings. The green coverage rate of this city is very high, just like a big park. Nanling was quite surprised. He had never expected such a scene. Then he remembered that this was Chugyvstar, the main star of the Give family. Most of the direct descendants of the Give family lived here. Naturally, they could live as comfortably as they wanted. There wouldn't be so many oppressive places. The gravity delivery capsule was still falling, but it had begun to decelerate sharply and was about to land. During this process, Nanling still didn't feel any gravity load. Everything was very stable and comfortable. Fanny introduced proudly, "Welcome to Chugyvstar, a place where all the elites are." Nanling was stunned, and then understood what she meant. Chugyvstar was not a place like the lower area of Chenyuan 06. He said, "Then it would be difficult for ordinary people to come to Chugyvstar, right?" Fanny was speechless suddenly, because she had never thought about this aspect. Liji laughed and said, "Of course it's difficult. First of all, you must have a certain level of income, and then your reputation in the ancient domain must be above 90. This is only a temporary entry condition. If you want to settle here, in addition to the people on the original ancient star as a guarantor, outsiders must also make special contributions." Mo then said, "These are general conditions. Shonan has the legal status of a branch of the Give family, and I am." She was halfway through her words and suddenly got stuck and turned her face away. Fanny was listening carefully at first, but she was amused when she got to this point. She smiled and said, "I didn't expect that I might have guaranteed a good matchmaker." Mo said coldly, "It's just a stopgap measure. Let's not talk about it." Nanling quickly glanced at Mo and confirmed that her emotional aura was pink, and then he felt relieved. For this sister, you must not just look at the surface. At this time, the gravity delivery capsule landed, and the four people walked out while chatting. The place where they landed was a large transportation hub, where many hovercrafts were waiting. They would fly automatically as long as the passengers got on. However, after everyone sat down in the hovercraft, Fanny realized a problem. "Where are we going?" Mo sent a command with a cold expression through the intelligence core. Then the hovercraft started. It sped at a speed of 600 kilometers per hour and headed straight for the outskirts of this garden-like city. Mo then said, "I have a property in Kulyu District 4, which was given to me by my father when I came of age." Fanny understood. Kulyu District 4. That community is not bad. It is a terrain with mountains and water, right? Mo nodded and said, "Well, but I haven't actually seen it myself. After all, I have been living with you since I came of age." Fanny said a little embarrassedly, "Yes, I have taken up too much of your time." She actually began to reflect on herself. Nanling and Mo looked at each other, and suddenly felt that this young lady seemed to have really grown up after experiencing so many things. Mo said, "I'm your follower. Isn't it normal for me to be by your side?" Fanny shook her head and said, "No, I just now know that everyone should have their own life. I was not satisfied with my father's control over my life before, and now I naturally can't do the same thing to you. Fortunately, now I see that you are quite happy, so I am happy too." She is actually very sensitive and considerate. Chapter 181 My Wife's House. Nanling saw where he was going to live next. It was a really beautiful place. I had said before that this place was surrounded by mountains and rivers. When Nanling really arrived here, he was surprised at the enjoyment of the residents of the ancient star. This place was located in the southwest of the Garden City. There were undulating mountains, winding rivers, and a verdant river winding around the mountains. It was very beautiful. Nanling noticed that there was actually a small building at each bend of the river, and these small buildings almost appeared in pairs. There was one on the side of the river bend that protruded above the water, and another on the side that was sunken. Mo introduced. "This is the 4th district of the Meander. There are only 22 households in the entire community. It can be called quiet." Nanling felt speechless at the time. They called this mountain and water a community. This was really a big deal. And Mo's house was built in a sunken place in the water bay, relying on the water. Unexpectedly, Fanny frowned and said, "This location is not very good. There is a lot of still water and stagnant water in this bay. It is not only not suitable for playing in the water, but also often has silt deposits, which is quite cumbersome to deal with." Mo said helplessly, "There is no way. After all, the house prices in the lower bay are cheaper. My father used his private money to buy me a house back then." Nanling was quite curious about Mo's father, but he was not rash. After all, his identity was actually quite embarrassing, and asking rashly would only make Mo feel embarrassed. Mo said, "Xiaonan, you should stay here for now. I have to go back once and take you to register for school tomorrow." It seems that Mo's schedule is very tight. Nanling nodded and said, "Oh, okay." He was actually not very interested and a little restrained. After all, this was actually living under someone else's roof. But he had never thought about buying a house and moving out to live in. This kind of thing could be a future goal. It would be too stupid to say it now. He still owed Mo nearly 2 million. Fanny had already rushed into the house, but soon she came out in boredom and said, "There's nothing here." Mo said helplessly, "Yeah, this is actually only my second time here. Apart from the housekeeping robots that keep things clean, no one comes here at all." Nanling didn't feel much about it. Li Ji seemed to be able to see what he was thinking, and gently patted his shoulder and said, "Since we are here, we should make the best of it. Don't forget where we are from." Nanling immediately understood what Li Ji meant. They were all from the lower class, and they couldn't stand any grievances for the sake of life. What's more, this was not a grievance for him, but just asking him to put away his pride a little. Fanny looked around and felt that there was nothing interesting, so she said, "Okay, I'm going back to Shonen. It would be great if you could successfully enroll. When the next semester starts, we can study in the same place again." Nanling asked in surprise, "Boss Fanny, you still need to go to school when you're in the Jindan stage?" Fanny rolled her eyes helplessly and said, "There's no way. The Jindan stage is just considered a little bit excellent in our school. Only when you reach the Earning stage can you graduate directly. That's really a distant thing." Nanling nodded boredly when he heard it. It seems that the requirements of this Chugyu Academy are very high. Li Ji looked at Nanling again and said, "I'm going back to the Special Service Division as well. I have a case to handle recently." Nanling asked curiously, "Is there a case here too?" Li Ji said, "Where there are people, there are cases. This Chugyu star is full of dignitaries, but there are 8 large space stations around Chugyu star that are even larger than Chunyuan, like satellites orbiting around it. They are all inhabited by people serving Chugyu star. I'm now in charge of the Special Service Section 5, and I'm the person in charge of special events at the Tech 5 space station." Nanling was quite moved after hearing this. In fact, he wanted to make up for the knowledge of Chugyu star before coming here, but he found that he could not search for relevant information on the internet. He had to come to Chugyu star and obtain the right to stay on this planet or within the scope of this planet before he could obtain the relevant information. At this time, his Z had already connected to the online community here and started to search for information. Only then did he know that the entire Chugyu star was actually a residential area, and the various facilities and functional departments serving Chugyu star were all on these 8 type of space stations. At this time, Nanling discovered that the Chugyu Academy was actually on the Tech 5 space station, which was the area where Li Ji was responsible for work, and he knew that this must be the arrangement made by Uncle Gichen. He glanced at Li Ji and sent a message saying, "Don't worry, don't forget that I am a person who is dedicated to the Tao. How could I care about such things?" Li Ji said unhappily, "I won't worry about you. How could I not know how cunning you are? By the way, do you want to study my new body? It's very powerful. This old aunt really can't be serious for much time, and she is going to start flirting again." Nanling immediately refused. "No, come to me when you need maintenance or transformation." Li Ji replied, "How ruthless." Then she left. The 3 girls left together, and Nanling suddenly became alone. In this empty room, there was nothing. It was cold and deserted. He pushed open the door of the small building and walked outside, breathing the extremely fresh air here, and suddenly felt that his body and mind calmed down. The small building is backed by a cliff, and it is built on a vacant lot under the cliff. I don't know whether this vacant lot is formed naturally or filled by man. In short, according to the Feng Shui he knows, this is a good place to gather water and hide wind by the mountains and rivers. Looking at all this, his mood calmed down. How long has it been since he saw such a beautiful scenery? Since he came to this world, he has not seen it at all. Now he can live in it in person, which seems to be really good. Gradually, the tangled feeling of being forced to feed a soft meal disappeared. Of course, it would not be too pleasant, but just figured it out. At this time, he returned to the house to pack his things, but found that Mo's luggage was also placed in the house. He was at a loss for a moment, but he did not touch her luggage, but meditated in this beautiful mountain building. Sure enough, the spiritual power here is extremely abundant. When meditating, just a breath, and you can only feel the spiritual energy filling your chest. He let out a long sigh, feeling quite helpless. The spiritual energy of this ancient planet is so abundant that it can be called a holy place for cultivation. But for the people on this planet, this is actually the most useless thing, because they only need to infuse their bodies with spiritual energy to cultivate, and they don't need to cultivate themselves at all. And those who need this abundant spiritual energy environment to cultivate are completely unqualified to come here to cultivate. This is really a helpless paradox. Chapter 182. Thoughts that even superpowers cannot understand. Nanling sighed alone in front of the house for a while, and suddenly remembered something, so she sent a message. Uncle Gu, I have arrived at Chugistar, and I say hello to you. A very polite greeting. After a while, Gichen's reply came. Already here? Welcome, no wonder Fanny is absent-minded today. Nanling immediately distanced herself from the matter and said, yes, she hasn't seen Mo for a long time, and she misses him very much. Gichen, I heard about you and Mo. I can only say that you are too messy. I'm afraid there will be a big commotion in Mo's family. Nanling also asked in annoyance. Then what should I do? Gichen, forget it, let's do it this way for now. In fact, the most worrying thing for parents is trusting the wrong person, but I believe you are a suitable candidate. Nanling said a little embarrassedly. Uncle Gu, we're just faking a marriage. Gichen said. Is it so important whether it is true or not? Anyway, you are going to live together for a long time, and then the fake will become true. I know Mo, if she doesn't really like you and can accept you, the idea of fake marriage will never be accepted by her. Nanling didn't know what to say for a moment. He could only bring up that topic he wanted to talk about originally to divert Gichen's attention. He said, Uncle Gu, about this exploration of the Antarctic Changshen, I will send you the information. This was agreed before. Unexpectedly, Gichen refused and said, no need. Nanling asked, no need. Gichen said, I have already made an agreement with Fan and I, this is her adventure, I can't snatch it. Alas, the last sigh can be said to have exposed the mentality of this old father. He was tossed around by his daughter and couldn't help it, and wanted to let her fly by herself but was worried. In short, it was something like this. Nanling said in surprise, but that's very dangerous. Gichen said, so before going there, you will have to be prepared and become strong. I will also send a capable assistant to Fan and I just hope she can stop messing around. Nanling also felt that it was reasonable. He somewhat understood Gichen's current mentality. Because Fanny had run away from home once before, Gichen did not dare to put pressure on Fanny again. And this time Fanny was able to help him through the difficulties by breaking her own golden elixir, which made him feel full of indebtedness to his daughter. Gichen talked to him a lot, and his tone was quite gentle and concerned. Gradually, Nanling also came to his senses. This was to help his daughter win people's hearts. Nanling had always thought that he was just Fanny's friend or employee, but he felt that he might be self-deprecating. He was the last feather guard of the Antarctic Changshen, and he was also the real feather general. At this point, he was actually a person of some status. Not to mention that he could open the secret treasure of the Changshen Xianzhou, just the essence and energy refining method he shared before might have caught Gichen's attention. After talking for a while, the communication finally ended. Nanling thought about it and felt that he didn't need to take Gichen's affairs too seriously. He thought for a moment, and it was getting dark. He looked at the grove around the house, and suddenly a good idea came to him. He browsed online and ordered some things. A moment later, a hammock appeared in the grove next to the house. Nanling swung in the hammock between two trees, feeling quite comfortable. Then his consciousness entered the virtual community. The entire virtual community of Chuxing was full of all kinds of things he had never seen before, which was quite interesting. But he was not a person who liked to wander around, so he searched according to his needs. The most urgent thing was of course the way to school. He found the Chugyu Academy on the Taikuno 5 space station in the virtual community. Even nearly half of the space of the entire Taikuno 5 space station belongs to this academy, which can be called a school city. The way to school every day is very problematic. When he got to Chugyu Academy from here, the first thing he had to consider was the problem of transportation. On Chuxing, there is a gravity delivery cabin that can directly reach Taikuno 5, but the distance of more than 300 kilometers on Chuxing and the distance of hundreds of kilometers inside Taikuno 5 need to find another means of transportation to complete. Nanling just felt that it was very inconvenient and hesitated for a while. Then he remembered the internal flight certificate he had obtained in Chunyuan 06, and wanted to check whether there was such a certificate on Tuxing. If there really is one, he can also take one. Then he found that there really is one. But there are two certificates, one of which is the second-level certificate for inner space flight. His previous Chunyuan 06 internal flight certificate can already be used. He only needs to submit the information of his flight facilities. If you want to fly with this second-level certificate, you must first apply for the route from the Tuxing Tower, and you can take off after the tower sends all the route information. But such a flight must be based on the fixed parameters provided by the tower, and the flyer cannot control his own flight direction and speed. Even if you want to change the destination, you have to apply to the central tower again. There is another one. The first-level certificate for inner space flight, which allows you to fly completely freely, even directly out of the atmosphere. This first-level certificate is also called the Special Flight Certificate. Nanling now automatically has the second-level certificate, but he really likes this Special Flight Certificate and immediately began to study what he needed to take the exam. You won't know until you see it, and it's really shocking. To obtain the Special Flight Certificate, there are more than 300 small projects, and each small project must be passed. Nanling put all his thoughts aside at the time, wiped his face and began to take the assessment for these small projects seriously. He found that the assessment content of these projects was very advanced, and they were all very professional maneuvers. He felt that if he passed these assessments completely, he could become a qualified elite space soldier. In fact, he had never been exposed to these contents before, and it was inevitable that he would fail in some places. But every time he stopped and thought carefully after failing, his strengthened thinking ability would enable him to think of a solution immediately, and then pass the next assessment. This efficiency is already extremely high. After one night, he only passed 100 assessment items. When he opened his eyes, he felt dizzy. It was already bright outside, and he got up to eat something. As a result, he smelled a faint smell of smoke coming from the next room. He walked in unexpectedly and saw Mo was calmly fiddling with various cooking equipment in the kitchen. Cooking in this era actually looks very casual and Nanling. As long as the ingredients are prepared in advance and put into the cooking equipment for automatic cooking, delicious dishes will appear immediately. Although it tastes good, it always feels lacking soul. Of course, it is also very convenient. Why are you sleeping outside alone? Mo asked lightly. Nanling replied, the scenery outside is beautiful, I like it. Mo's eyes moved, and her hands did not stop, preparing breakfast for Nanling, and said at the same time, I have almost finished my work over there. In 2 days, you have to go to the Chugyu Academy on Taiguno 5 to register for the entrance examination. Nanling said lowered his head and ate a mouthful of the sandwich made by Mo, then gave a thumbs up and said, it tastes better than my mother's. He immediately noticed that Mo's emotional spectrum appeared like pink, and she was obviously very satisfied with his compliment. However, she would not show it on her face, but just said coldly, you should study the various colleges of Chugyu Academy carefully in the next 2 days, and decide which college to register for. Then his face softened a little and said, I have some things to do in the next 2 days, so I can't be here with you, take care of yourself. Nanling felt that this explanation was completely redundant, and he was the best at taking care of himself. So he said, don't worry, I'm very comfortable by myself. Then he noticed that Mo's emotional aura suddenly dimmed, as if she was not very satisfied with his answer. Chapter 183 5 colleges. Mo left in a hurry after breakfast, and no one knew how long she had been back. Watching the hovercraft leave, Nanling called the housekeeping robot to clean up the mess and sat down on the sofa on the ground floor of the small building, continuing to think about the special flight certificate. Perhaps because of the love breakfast, his thinking speed was a little faster, and he passed more than 70 assessments in one morning. In this way, all 200 assessments have been passed. If he keeps working hard, he can wear the Welling wingsuit to go to school. This is amazing. Nanling is extremely motivated. So he really cultivated immortals. He stayed up until late at night that day, with thick dark circles under his eyes, and finally passed the remaining assessment items before he felt relieved. The special flight certificate was finally obtained. To be honest, these assessment items became more and more difficult as they went on, and he felt that there might be something wrong with them. After all, if it was just a test, the assessment should be conducted from different dimensions but with the same difficulty. However, the initial assessment content was indeed difficult, but it became more and more difficult as the assessment progressed. The later assessments were all actual combat examples, but with different focuses, requiring him to pass through complex interstellar battlefields with specific technical movements. This is really, Nanling didn't understand, was this a test of flight qualifications, or was it to train an ace pilot? Anyway, he managed to get through it. Several times, he had to use the method of entering the brain with essence to strengthen his reaction and adaptability, so when he finished the assessment, he looked exhausted as if he had been replenished. At this time, Mo just came back from outside with a tired face, and saw Nanling lying on the sofa in the living room, looking lazy. She asked speechlessly, "Have you chosen a college?" Nanling sat up and cheered up and said, "Well, what to choose?" He was at a loss for a moment, obviously forgetting what Mo said yesterday morning. Mo was a little angry when she saw him like this, and then became quite calm. What is there to be angry about? If she is angry about such a small thing, then all her cultivation with Fanny will be in vain. She continued coldly, "It's Chugyu Academy. Which academy are you going to choose?" Nanling asked curiously, "Which academies are there?" "I searched online, but there is no explanation about this." Mo said, "Okay, I didn't tell you clearly before, so I'll tell you again now. Chugyu Academy has a total of 5 academies. The most popular one is the Commander Academy, which studies a variety of subjects including their command, frontline command, overall command, resource control, etc. It is the largest cradle of officers in the ancient domain. Next is the Fighting Academy, which includes a variety of combat skills such as space combat, close combat, long-range sniping, and fire control. For those students who do not have a talent for comprehensive control, this is the best place to go. The Equipment Manufacturing Academy is comparable to the Fighting Academy. Here you will learn the design ideas and related theories of various high-precision equipment, and will teach the knowledge of spiritual weapon manufacturing from the basics. The next less popular one is the Science and Technology College, which studies various cutting-edge scientific and technological theories, among which the most outstanding are physics and life engineering. She was halfway through her words when she saw Nanling shaking his head, so she stopped talking and said, "The last academy is a little deserted. It's the Academy of Cultivation." Nanling's eyes lit up and he asked, "Is it studying cultivation methods?" Mo said, "Yes, there is indeed research in this area, but in recent years, as the path of cultivation has gradually solidified, now more research and development of new skills are being carried out here, and how to better combine spiritual power with technology." Nanling didn't find it strange to hear this. He was just interested because of the name and had no other options in his mind. Seeing this, Mo couldn't help but smile and said, "It seems that you have made your choice. I thought you would choose the Equipment Manufacturing Academy, but I didn't expect that you would be interested in this gradually declining Cultivation Academy." Then she remembered something and said, "Yes, you often have unique insights into cultivation, and it is normal for you to have ideas in this regard." Nanling stood up and started to fiddle in the kitchen while saying, "So which academy did you choose, sister?" Mo said, "I chose the Equipment Manufacturing Academy at first. Generally, followers will choose between the Equipment Manufacturing Academy and the Fighting Academy. But later, I completed the credits of the Equipment Manufacturing Academy, and transferred to the Fighting Academy for further studies for a period of time. It was also there that I developed the habit of fitness. Later, after completing the credits of the Fighting Academy, I simply transferred to the Commander Academy to study with Fanny." Nanling exclaimed in her heart when she heard it. Mo is definitely performing like a genius, and Boss Fanny is definitely a drag. If he had expected correctly, Fanny and Mo should have been enrolled together, but Mo had completed the credits of both academies and she was still hanging around in the Commander Academy. But then Nanling thought of something and asked, "But I remember you said before that you had completed some credits of the Chugyu Academy." Mo nodded and said, "I have completed the credits of the Commander Academy. This time, I wanted to take advantage of Fanny's return to the academy to continue to apply for a new subject to start studying, but he knew that the academy's dean would not agree." Nanling was speechless. He felt that it was right to disagree. After all, if such a sister who was a god of learning continued to study in the Chugyu Academy, it would definitely dampen the enthusiasm of other students. But Mo then said, "But you can rest assured that I still have the qualification toward it. Today, you should wash up first, and then follow me to register and take the assessment." Nanling listened and said yes, yes, yes while frying an egg pancake on his hand. Mo tasted it and then sighed. "Your cooking skills are really good. I'm not like me, who can only use cooking equipment to make programmed food." Nanling smiled and shook his head and said, "It's just my personal hobby." It would be great if there was a culinary academy in this school. Mo also smiled for a rare time. She knew that this was a joke. After eating, Nanling took a bath and washed up, and he looked a lot more energetic. In fact, he no longer needs sleep now. The strong energy guarantees him enough energy. Mo is the same. Although she looks very tired when she comes back, she is full of energy after taking care of herself. She is a woman who can uproot weeping willows. What does fatigue mean to her? At this time, Mo took out 3 more packaging boxes and said, "Here, this is the Ruling series I bought for you. Hurry up and change it." Nanling's eyes were red at the time. Because he checked the price of this Ruling set on the internet, the full set would cost 1.2 million Lingzhu points. It's so terrible, how can he pay it back? I really owe more and more. He smiled bigly. Mo Yining smiled and said, "Consider it as you borrowing it from me. Just remember to return it later." Chapter 184 What's wrong with carrying your wife on your back? Nanlin, with a touch of sadness, followed Mo on a self-service airborne vehicle and headed for the nearest space elevator station. Why was he sad? Because he had just accidentally turned on the automatic backup and transfer function of the 3-piece suit. The newly acquired Ruling suit automatically loaded the settings of the Ziving suit, and then his brand new Ruling Smart Core became stuck. Damn it. The contents of the Ziving Smart Core about the hyperspace observation scene were also loaded into the Ruling Smart Core. The storage space of the Ruling Smart Core can be said to be 10 times that of the Ziving, but it is still occupied by the rapidly expanding data, occupying 70% of the memory space. Although the automatic deletion function was turned on, the number was still slowly increasing to 80%, causing Nanling's underload phobia to relapse. He felt distressed. The brand new, more advanced Ruling suit had become almost the same as the old machine. But he couldn't express this pain. This was a 3-piece set worth 1.2 million. In less than 5 minutes after it came into his hands, it became an old machine with little computing power. He felt bitter. Although he knew that if he told Mo would definitely buy him another set and let him own more and more, that was why he was determined not to let Mo know the problem with his smart core. So he cheered up and decided to use the old method and use his human brain as a computing power plug-in for the smart core. Poor thing, other people's smart cores are to assist the human brain, but he used the human brain to assist the smart core in computing. Think about it, it's better not to have a smart core to calculate. Anyway, his brain can react now. Half an hour later, Nanling followed Mo back to the garden-like city and came to the space elevator station. It was morning at this time, and Nanling found that there were actually many people queuing up here waiting to board the gravity delivery module. Mo looked at the number of people queuing, and said, "It will probably take 20 minutes, let's just wait." Nanling said speechlessly, "Is there a rush hour here too?" Mo nodded and said, "In fact, those who can live on Chu-Give Star are not all from wealthy families. They are mainly the children of important branches of the Give family or the children of follower families. They often have important responsibilities in the surrounding Tae-Give space station." At this time, Nanling saw a spaceship suddenly soaring into the sky, and it actually moved left and right to avoid the path of the hovercraft before soaring into the sky and flying directly out of the atmosphere. Mo explained, "They are ace pilots with special flight certificates. They are comfortable, and their commute often only takes a dozen or 20 minutes. Nanling calculated the time and exclaimed, "It has taken us half an hour to get here from home, and then we have to wait in line for another 20 minutes. Mo went on to say, "The total commuting time is 1.5 hours, because it takes 15 minutes in the space elevator, and then it takes 5 minutes to walk out of the space elevator station and get on the airship, and then it takes 10 minutes from the airship to the academy station, and then at least 10 minutes of walking." Very rigorous, worthy of being Mo. He calculated everything. Nanling groaned, then said with relief, "Then let's fly too." Mo showed an embarrassment and said, "But I didn't have time to get the special flight certificate." Then, as if worried that Nanling would blame him, he explained, "There are still 4 subjects left to take, but the scenes in these 4 subjects are too complicated. I tried several times and didn't get the point, so I gave up and ignored it. If I take the test now, maybe I can pass it." Nanling laughed and said, "Don't worry, you didn't pass the test, but I did. Come, I'll carry you." As he said that, he had a thought and put on the pure color faith hidden in the folding backpack behind him, and then the 2 wings unfolded from the folded state, and the welding wingsuit was also loaded. This obviously attracted the attention of the people around him. Mo was also surprised for a moment, and then gently covered her lips and said, "You took 3 days to pass the special flight certificate. She was shocked and felt completely incomprehensible at the same time. Nanling had already half crouched down and said, "Yes, come, I'll carry you on my back." Mo felt unbelievable. She found that she was always shocked by Nanling. It was better when Nanling's cultivation was weak. She just thought that this young man had good talent and could always bring them some surprises. But now as Nanling's foundation became stronger and stronger, she began to feel shocked. Seeing that she didn't respond, Nanling urged her, "Don't stand there. We're husband and wife. What's there to be shy about?" Mo felt her heart skip a beat, and she had no idea at the time. She put on her Wuzu armor and then lay on Nanling's back. She didn't say a word, but her mind was blank. Then Nanling whispered, "Hold tight, I'm going to take off." She said in a voice as soft as a mosquito. "Yes." Then Nanling jumped up and the whole person turned into a stream of light and disappeared into the sky. This was not the acceleration of the wingsuit, nor was it the warwind technique dancing in the sky, but his pure wind escape effect. What is wind escape? Blend into the wind, turn into wind, and walk with the wind. So Mo didn't feel the impact of the sudden acceleration at this time. Instead, she felt a force behind her pushing her up. She was obviously accelerating, but she felt that all the wind was pushing her from behind, and there was no resistance in front of her. She was secretly amazed that Nanling's wind control technique had reached such a level that it even exceeded the maneuverability of the wingsuit in the atmosphere. After they spent 3 or 2 minutes to leave the atmosphere and come to outer space, Nanling's wailing wingsuit exerted force again, accelerating and shooting the two people towards the Tycho 5 space station. Mo thought there would be a huge inertia tearing, and hurriedly hugged Nanling's neck with both hands. Unexpectedly, there was inertia, but Nanling also considerately used wind skills to create airflow to push her back, so that she didn't feel any effort at all. This feeling was like she had a mount that could fly freely in the Chugi star system, which seemed very good. Tycho 5 space station is a space building that looks very clean and bright white. However, compared with other space stations with countless flying ships coming and going, Tycho 5 space station seems a little deserted after all. Nanling was about to enter the space station from the airport gate when Mo suddenly reminded her, "You have a special flight certificate. You can go through a special channel and enter the space station directly without inspection." Upon hearing this, Nanling looked for the special channel and asked, "Is this possible? Aren't you afraid that someone will do something bad because of this?" Mo said, "People who can get special flight certificates have to go through layers of screening to be qualified, so I'm quite curious about what those who approved you were thinking." Nanling suddenly realized, could it be Uncle Gyu? Mo was relieved and said, "If it was Master Chen who did it, then it's understandable. Then I have to pass the special flight certificate when I go back today, otherwise," Nanling said casually, "otherwise I can carry you on my back." Mo said, "You're dreaming." Nanling looked around and felt relieved after confirming that Mo was glowing with a pink emotional aura. Chapter 185 Everyone must have a love rival. After Nanling carried Mo into Tycho 5, the elder sister jumped off his back anxiously. While she was struggling to get rid of Nanling's back, she unfolded the wingsuit behind her, and then flew beside him and said, "I have the flight certificate for this space station, so you don't have to carry it on your back." Nanling was a little disappointed, but he knew that Mo was shy, and he must not force her too much at this time. So he asked, "Where is the entrance examination?" Mo said, "Follow me." Then he accelerated and flew downward. Nanling followed behind her. He looked at the Chugyu Academy with admiration. The entire Tycho 5 was actually built for this academy. Its architectural style is very interesting, and it seems to be a combination of technology and art. He only then realized that although this Chugyu Academy is the 5 major colleges, there are also some other art and economic academies here. The entire space station is at Campus City. In addition to the students of various colleges and academies, there are also residences for faculty and staff and supporting service personnel. At this time, they fell down and came to an independent 10-story building. Mo landed in front of the building and stood still, then said, "This is it, you come in with me, be careful not to talk nonsense." Nanling nodded, looked at the sign hanging in front of the building's lobby, and found that it actually said 7th Training Ground. He walked into this place. The entrance is a very empty hall, except for many waiting service robots around. It seems that there is nothing. But Nanling knows that these are all illusions. At least now, after he entered here, Rifngzini has already contacted an external system, but he currently does not have access rights. Mo brought him here, and said as she walked, "Because we came a little early, your review teacher may not have come yet, let's find a place to sit first." As she said that, she took Nanling to a corner, and then knelt down. Nanling was surprised, and then saw that the place where Mo sat actually rose automatically with a metal stool with a certain arc, allowing her to sit comfortably. He also tried to sit down, and sure enough, he sat down in a solid place. But sitting in this empty hall always feels a little strange. As if knowing his thoughts, a circle of light flashed in front of Mo's eyes, and then a white wall stood up around the two of them, forming a compartment. But this compartment is not invisible to the outside, at least it is transparent facing the door. Nanling was amazed. To be honest, after arriving at the range of Chuxing, he found that he was still the bumpkin he had never seen before, and everything was new to him. Mo asked, "Do you want to drink something?" Nanling was about to say something, then shook his head and said, "Forget it, I have to meet guests later, it would be bad if I burp." Mo shook his head and laughed. "Don't add bubbles to when he drinks, and the person who came is not of high status. He is just an assistant who confirmed the assessment items for you and witnessed it." However, at this time, a voice suddenly came from the door. "Student Ling, why are you talking bad about people behind their backs again?" Mo looked up and said, "I speak directly, unlike someone who obviously arrived early but pretended not to be here." The person who came was a bit ruffian and full of cynicism. Mo then said to Nanling, "Gyunu, this is your assessment teacher." Nanling immediately greeted politely and said, "Hello, Teacher Gyu." Gyunu waved his hand and said, "I'm just an assistant teacher, you don't need to call me teacher." "Little brother, you are so young and you are in a hurry to enroll. Aren't you afraid that you can't keep up with the studies? Otherwise, you should go back for another year and come back, so that we can save trouble." Nanling was surprised and turned to look at Mo. Mo nodded slightly and said to him, "Lingy is my last name, I just prefer my own people to call me Mo. In addition, because the age of admission to Chugyu Academy is 20 years old, you are just over 19 years old this year, so you have to go through a special approval process." Then she turned to Gyunu and said, "Don't talk nonsense, since I have already submitted the application for him, I will not withdraw it." Nanling sat quietly, looking very well behaved. "Well, let the good sister arrange such trivial matters, he just needs to do it." Gyunu laughed and said, "This child is quite well behaved. Is he the nephew of one of your relatives?" Mo paused for a moment, then said frankly, "He is my husband." Nanling was a little surprised. He didn't expect Mo to announce their relationship so bluntly. Gyunu's smile froze for a moment. He said, "Are you kidding?" Mo shook her head and said, "Seriously." Gyunu was not calm anymore. He asked, "Why is it so?" Mo said, "Because Kukchuan forced me to do it, and I don't want to wander around anymore." Gyunu was stunned for a moment, then looked at Mo's beautiful and cold face, smiled bitterly and said, "I, as a friend, can help you with this kind of thing." Nanling was instantly full of hostility towards this bastard teacher. This guy obviously had improper thoughts about his good sister. But Mo seemed to not understand the meaning of his words, and said very calmly, "But, Shonan is my most trusted friend." Gyunu was even more surprised. He said, "I have known you for more than 10 years, what about him?" Mo said, "We have known each other for only 2 years, but that's enough." Gyunu shook his head helplessly. He said, "I still think this is not your best choice, can he really withstand the pressure for you?" Nanling wanted to say at this time, "I can." But Mo gave him a look, and then responded coldly, "I don't need anyone to bear the pressure for me, I will withstand all the pressure for him. Now, let's talk about the assessment, don't talk about such irrelevant things." Gyunu still had countless things to say, but he obviously understood that it was not appropriate to say more at the current time and his identity. He could only sigh and say, "Okay, I understand." But the expression on his face could not maintain the previous cynicism after all, but was full of irritability. Nanling was really not surprised by this situation. After all, Mo was such an outstanding person, how could he not be liked? He just met such a suitor now. Gyunu calmed down a little, and then said, "What's your name, little brother?" Nanling said, "My name is Nanling." Gyunu frowned. "I've never heard of this surname." Nanling said, "It was a branch of the Gyu family that was wandering outside." Gyunu nodded and said, "I see, then which college are you going to apply for?" Nanling said bluntly, "The Cultivation College." Gyunu was a little surprised and said, "Why do you want to go there? That's not a good choice." Nanling didn't care about it and said, "I just think going there will help me the most." Gyunu heard it and said, It's up to you, but the assessment indicators of this unpopular subject are not low at all. You have to be prepared. Nanling saw a clear hostile emotional spectrum in this person. Very good, the first rival in love has appeared. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 186. No more urgency. Gyunu seemed to have calmed down completely, and then said, "In that case, let's meet in the training room on the 3rd floor of the training building. It is more suitable for this kind of assessment." As he said that, he stood up and went out, taking Nanling with him to prepare for the assessment. But Mo was still sitting there without moving. Nanling looked over curiously. Mo said, "You can go by yourself, I'll wait for you here." She didn't plan to follow. Nanling didn't care about it, so she went upstairs with Gyunu. The whole building is composed of training rooms with different main bodies. Gyunu asked as he walked, "How did you know Mo?" Nanling was stunned for a moment before he realized that he was asking about his sister Mo, and then he said, "She and Boss Fana came to Fenu to recruit crew members, and I applied for it at first." Gyunu was very surprised. He didn't expect Nanling to be so honest. He asked, "Are you an employee of Fanu?" Nanling nodded and said, "Yes, I still have the contract with me." Gyunu saw that Nanling's expression changed immediately, and he asked incredulously, "How did any mole like you?" Nanling didn't find his tone offensive, but just thought about it seriously and said, "Maybe I made her feel at ease." Gyunu was surprised. At ease? Nanling didn't think much about this topic. He asked, "What is the content of my assessment?" Gyunu withdrew his thoughts and then said, "If we talk about this assessment, there are many tricks in it. There are 17 small items here, and you must pass them one by one to pass the assessment." Nanling's cheek twitched when he heard it, and then he actually thought it was normal. After all, he had experienced more than 300 small items of special flight certificates, and at this time he actually felt that the assessment items were quite few. He said, "Well, where should we start?" Gyunu said, "The first item is to examine the number of spells you have mastered. This is not difficult. You can just show me the authorization record of the intelligence core." Nanling showed it as he was told. Gyunu took a look and frowned and said, "There are quite a few wind spells, but most of them are elementary and medium wind spells, and there are even basic wind spells. Don't you have any advanced wind spells?" Nanling shook his head and said, "There are no channels." In fact, Nanling didn't think too much about this, because he found that the inspiration that medium wind spells could bring him was already very little, but the elementary and basic wind spells covered a wider range and had more ways to be used in combination. Gyunu then said, "In this case, this test is considered passed, but you may not pass the next wind spell level, and the same is true for the spell power." Nanling was a little surprised. The spell level was also an assessment item. Then he felt that he might really not pass it. Seeing this, Gyunu smiled and said, "Are you scared? But don't worry, as long as you pass 10 of the 17 items, you will be qualified. You still have a chance." Nanling looked at the man's smug face and his mood became worse. He felt that he was going to lose face. The assessment continued, and the remaining assessment contents included spell lethality, spiritual power control, spell mastery proficiency, etc., which almost tested Nanling's ability from all dimensions. But unfortunately, due to the lack of high-level spells, Nanling could not meet the standards for many small items that could only be met with high-level spells. Before his last assessment, he had already failed 7 items. In other words, if he failed the last assessment again, would he fail the assessment? Nanling didn't feel very good. In fact, he already felt that Gyunu was making things difficult for him. But he was not sure whether the Gyunu in front of him was a smart person or a stupid person. If he was a smart person, then it would be fine to make things difficult for him to this extent, and let him pass the assessment and enter the school smoothly, which would save Mo's face. And the one who lost the admission score was Nanling's own. But if Gyunu was a stupid person, then he would deliberately reject him, just to disgust him, without considering Mo's face. Nanling was not in a hurry. He looked at this person with a considering look, and didn't know what he would choose. Gyunu originally thought that Nanling was too easy to control, and whatever he said was what he did. Just when he wanted to tease this guy again, he suddenly found that Nanling's eyes had changed. He looked at him with a very playful look, full of teasing. His expression changed, and he asked, "Aren't you worried that you won't pass the assessment?" Nanling said calmly, looking at so many assessment items. I'm actually quite disappointed. If the entrance assessment of this academy is only for this aspect, I think it's better for me to study the way of cultivation myself. Gyunyu's face changed slightly, and he said, you were not big, but you were very arrogant. These are all hard indicators, and this last assessment is the most important. If you don't pass, you really can't get in. Nanling said, if you don't pass, then don't pass. Anyway, system, I will teach me whatever I want to learn. Gyunyu's face suddenly became very ugly. Damn it, why didn't he think of this? At this time, he thought that instead of letting Mo give this kid private lessons, it would be better to keep him in the academy for classes. He said with a rather ugly expression, but it's useless to say anything now. The content of the last assessment is fixed. Whether you can pass it depends on your real ability. As soon as he finished speaking, he took Nanling to a room. But a series of lists soon appeared in this room. Nanling scanned the lists and found that they were all medium-level spells, but they were all medium-level spells that he had never heard of. Seeing this, Gyunyu took a deep breath and said proudly, here are the graduation projects made by students of the previous Cultivation Academy. They can only graduate successfully if they independently complete the creation of a new medium-level spell. And the content of your assessment is to select one of the spells without the assistance of the intelligence core, and then learn and master it as quickly as possible. Nanling's expression suddenly became excited. He felt that this matter had become a little interesting until now. In the previous assessments, whether he passed or not, he had no interest at all. Because he could pass the ones that could be passed, he could pass them casually, and those that could not be passed would not be passed. But now it is different. This is the first time he has done such a thing without the assistance of the intelligence core to learn a medium-level spell, which is full of novelty. But when Gyunyu saw him like this, he felt that he was completely heartless. Thinking of what Nanling had just said, if you fail the exam, you can only go back and face Mo one-on-one, Gyunyu found that he was even more anxious than Nanling at this moment. He said, take a good look. Once you are selected, the assessment will begin. He paused, then suddenly jumped up and said, why did you choose now? Don't be so casual. He was anxious, really anxious. Because he realized that Nanling might have deliberately failed the exam. No, it must be like this. This kid is very bad. Chapter 187 Wind and Clouds. Listening to Gyunyu's clamor, Nanling waved his hand impatiently and said, stop making noise. Has the timer started? As he spoke, he had already taken off his intelligence core. The information on the light screen in front of him changed immediately. As the timer began, it turned into a paper of tens of thousands of words. This paper describes a wind technique called wind rolling clouds and thunder. Nanling thought it was very interesting. It was actually thinking about how to create thunder by friction of airflow. This article studied many factors such as air humidity, flow speed, and angle, and analyzed how to do this from a completely scientific and technological perspective. Nanling read the content of this paper quickly. He turned the pages repeatedly and finished reading in just 5 minutes. Then he lowered his head to think about the data in it. He had some ideas in his mind, so he immediately tried to raise a finger. When the index finger of his right hand was raised, a layer of whirlwind surrounded the fingertips. But then a reverse whirlwind was generated in the inner circle, and the airflow rotated rapidly in both positive and negative directions. A moment later, lightning was generated. This wind and clouds is really interesting, and the various parameters in it are really critical and detailed. Otherwise, Nanling would not be able to create such an airflow in such a short time. And such a scene has already shocked the onlookers. 5 minutes, Nanling completed the entry of this wind dart in just 5 minutes without the help of the intelligence core. Wind and clouds, this Gyunyu actually has a deep impression of this wind dart. In the early years, the ancient domain and the wind domain had a lot of exchanges, so the two sides often had academic exchanges. And this wind dart was born in that era. It seems to be a medium-level wind dart, but in fact, the requirements for spiritual power control even reach a high level of wind dart. Gyunyu was shocked before, because he saw Nanling chose this wind dart and thought he was courting death. But now he watched Nanling master the entry in 5 minutes. This ability, he suddenly remembered a sentence Nanling said before. This academy is not interesting. At the time, he thought this might be Nanling's self-consolation words when he saw that he could not pass the exam. But now it seems that this is clearly the real feeling of others. At this time, Nanling has not finished yet. As the thunderstorm on his fingertips formed, he quickly understood the advantages and disadvantages of this wind technique and quickly optimized it. He has discovered that this WIM technique should be only a preliminary version, and there are still defects in many places. For example, the paper only introduces how to create such a thunderstorm, but does not say how to control it for your own use, nor does it say the appropriate application scenario. This is obviously something invented for the sake of invention. Maybe people have some reservations and just left a preliminary version here. Nanling thought about it and felt interesting, and then expanded the fingertip storm little by little. He felt that the positive and negative cyclones were like a millstone, with countless fine thunders appearing in the middle. Then he had an idea, and the positive and negative cyclones were put on his wrist like a bracelet. He shook his hand with interest, and then felt a burst of electric current burning on his wrist, which made him feel quite painful. Well, this trick is not suitable for him. Then he flicked his hand, and saw a flash of lightning shooting out from his wrist, bombarding a target far away in the training ground, showing, well, not too high lethality. Then he stopped, looking at his palm that was smoking and felt helpless. At least he was not suitable for this use now, but he could try it after putting on the combat armor, which should be able to withstand the power stimulated by this thunder. But then he thought about it again and felt something was wrong. If he wanted to use this WIM technique to produce a thunder that was strong enough to break the opponent's armor, then he would first have to be unable to withstand it, right? Useless, really useless. It seems that he needs to think about the use of this WIM technique more carefully. Anyway, he can't use his body as a carrier. He thought about it. This WIM technique is just not fully developed now. In Nanling's mind, it is actually full of development potential. This potential does not only come from the scope of a single WIM technique, but this WIM technique also involves the lethality of lightning attributes. If it can be thought about carefully, there must be many directions for extension. Okay, you passed. Gyunyu saw Nanling calm down, so he hurriedly stopped her. His mentality was very complicated now. Originally, he thought that Nanling would just fail the exam, but later he thought it would be better if she passed. But now he felt that he might suffer a round of social death after the school started. He finally understood why Mo, a strange woman who was usually pure and innocent and never spoke to men, would be interested in Nanling. Putting aside other reasons, just this understanding and learning ability are already amazing. Anyone with a brain can know that this must be a potential stock. What Gyunyu is worried about now is whether the professors at the Cultivation Academy will be surprised why such a talented young man only passed the exam with a passing score after the school started. Gyunyu was worried, and he didn't expect that he would actually shoot himself in the foot this time. Nanling stopped, looked at Gyunyu who was absent-minded and asked, "Is it done?" Gyunyu came back to his senses and said, "It's done, you have passed the test, now go back." Nanling nodded and walked back. This person is a love rival, so he was too lazy to talk to his love rival. He returned to the lobby on the ground floor and saw Mo sitting in her seat, looking a little irritated and uneasy. She saw Nanling coming and asked, "How is it, did you pass the test?" It seems that she is not worried about whether he can pass the test. Nanling said, "Passed, and there is an unexpected reward." He raised his wrist and shook it, and saw a thick black jade bracelet with fine lightning jumping out of it. Mo asked, "What is this?" Nanling smiled and said, "Stretch out your hand." Mo did not doubt him and stretched out his right hand. Nanling saw this and stretched out his hand to hold her hand. Her hand trembled slightly, and then stopped. Because she saw the Gyunyu behind Nanyan, she felt that it was better to give Nanyan's face in front of outsiders, but she had to clean up the stinky boy who had to went to the foot. One through the wrist, and then a lightning whip was screwed out, a crispy noise on the ground. Yu Yan looked at this scene, and suddenly became inferior. Is this too? Chapter 188. A science fiction version of the law should not be spread lightly. Gyunyu now felt that he had brought this upon himself. He had wanted to make Nanling feel bad, but now it was clear that he was the one who felt bad. Because Nanling didn't seem to care about her grades at all, as long as she could pass. And Mo also had a normal attitude, and had no intention of asking about Nanling's grades. But Gyunyu knew that Nanling's grades at this time were extremely deceptive. If everyone knew Nanling based on this passing grade after school started, then Gyunyu could foresee what a large-scale show-off and face-slapping scene that would be. He suddenly felt envious. This kind of life should be very interesting, right? He interrupted the two people who were unconsciously showing off their love and affection over there with a dry cough and said, "Since you have passed the exam, some permissions can be opened for you. You can now access the online community of this Chugyu Academy, and there will be everything you want in it." He said in a deliberately flattering manner, "My car is outside, do you want to take you there?" Mo refused. No need, we still have some things to do here. Gyun sighed and left. He was a person who wanted to get into Mo's heart, but unfortunately he could only wander outside. He just couldn't figure out how Nanling got in. When Nanling saw that person leave, his face fell and he looked depressed. Mo said, "Why, were you bullied by that person?" Nanling said, "Not really, I just feel that this cultivation academy doesn't seem to be anything special, it's not what I imagined." Mo asked in surprise, "Why?" Nanling said, "I thought that in this cultivation academy, I would be able to learn things like exploring the secrets of ancient cultivation, discovering the potential of the body, and exploring the mysteries of cultivation, but when I looked at the assessment content, it turned out to be the assessment of spellcasting ability and spellcasting means. In my opinion, this is simply a matter of missing the point." Mo was speechless, and she felt that Nanling was a little handsome when she saw him talking so confidently. She said, "In fact, the key is not what you learn here, but that you can browse all its information through the qualification of this student, and there should be what you want here." Nanling was happy to hear this. Then he asked, "By the way, you looked so worried just now. Did you encounter any trouble?" Mo didn't want to say it. Nanling said, "Maybe I can help you." Mo had no choice but to sigh and said, "Well, I was a little upset because I didn't pass the assessment for the special flight certificate." Nanling blinked in surprise and asked, "Did you encounter any difficulties?" Mo said, "I found that my reaction is always untimely. The more complex the battlefield environment is, the more I tend to be flustered. Now there are still 2 assessments that I can't pass, which is really embarrassing." Nanling pondered and asked, "Can't the intelligence core provide timely and effective information?" Mo said, "The battlefield information collected by the intelligence core is too complicated, and because many attacks in high-intensity battlefields are not locked and launched, they often catch people off guard." Nanling understood after listening. He compared his experience of successfully passing the assessment, and then thought of a very unexpected possibility. He said, "Mo, you also know that I always like to use my own abilities more instead of relying on the intelligence core to do things, so I suggest that you try to give full play to your thinking ability." Mo was also slightly surprised when he heard this, and then he realized that this was Nanling passing on his experience of passing the test. He immediately said, "Okay, I'll try again." So he entered the experiment on the spot. Nanling didn't care about it, anyway, it was quite comfortable to sit in this training building. He simply connected his consciousness to the intelligence core and entered the network community of the Chugyu Academy. This network community turned out to be the same data model of the entire Type 5 space station, and the community was very lively, which was completely different from the current Type 5. Many energetic young people came and went in it, which seemed very energetic. Nanling didn't look at these, but the intelligence core connected to the location again, and then came to a building called Book Collection Building. This is the data center of the entire Chugyu Academy, which contains all the relevant learning and research materials, which can be said to be a very rich collection. Nanling walked in. It seemed that there were not many people here. Perhaps it was because the school had not started yet. He saw 5 doors, corresponding to 5 colleges. As for him, except for the Cultivation College, the doors of other colleges were locked. Nanling did not hesitate. He pushed the door and walked into the library of the Cultivation College. When he pushed the door in, he did not expect to see a very narrow but warm reading space. A set of tables, chairs and a window were all the things in this small reading space. His intelligence core was connected to the database and began to screen the wind magic that he could learn. But a reality that made him feel helpless appeared. That is, almost all the learning materials here cost money. Very good, this is very realistic. Nanling's defensor was almost broken in an instant. Then he went to this Chugyu Academy with so much effort and had to pay. Then he calmed down and found that it seemed to make sense, because the magic research materials in this Chugyu Academy were all made by predecessors and were copyrighted. The copyright period is different from that of the entertainment industry. The copyright period of these magic research materials is 200 years, and even after the copyright expires, it can be renewed through review. This is the intellectual property of this era. In fact, thinking about it this way is in line with Nanling's understanding of the law should not be passed on lightly. However, Nanling still found some magic materials without copyright protection. He found that the Wind and Cloud Thunder he just bought was one of them. This situation is generally due to the owner's death and the descendant's unwillingness to pay the fee to renew the copyright. Nanling couldn't help but sigh. In his eyes, this wind and cloud thunder can be regarded as an excellent magic, but he didn't expect that it was at least 200 years old and was still in a state of no one caring. He also collected some free magic materials. Interestingly, he found that when he was studying a kind of magic material, similar celestial phenomena would evolve outside the window of the data reading room where he was, as if to increase his understanding. Nanling flicked through various materials in this environment for a while and found it quite interesting. At this time, he felt someone touching him, so he came back to his senses and left the study room. When he opened his eyes, he saw that Mo had finished her work with a happy look. "Success?" Nanling asked. Mo nodded and said, "The method you said is very useful. It can be said that it awakened me. I really relied too much on the intelligence core in this regard before. Little do you know that as the cultivation level of the cultivator improves, his own thinking ability should be gradually enhanced and even not inferior to the intelligence core. This time when we go back, I won't need you to carry me." Nanling didn't feel anything when he heard it. After all, there were 2 layers of combat armor between them, so how could it feel good? He said, "Okay, then we go back. What do you want to eat today?" Mo said, "I want to eat fish, the kind you made for me last time on Pluto." Nanling smiled and said, "Heavy taste." "I understand." The two walked out of the training building while talking, and then they were covered with pure faith and Wuzhou, and the wailing wingsuit extended from the back. While talking about very ordinary things, they took off at the same time, left the space station and headed back. Chapter 189 Money is still necessary. The couple returned home together, and the wingsuits spread out like the wings of a phoenix, giving them a feeling of flying side by side. The two even couldn't help but race to see who could get home faster. However, because they were both wearing the welding wingsuit, they were still evenly matched in the end. After landing, Mo glanced at him and said, "Who asked you to let me go?" Nanling said, "I didn't let you go." Mo said indifferently, "We may not be able to tell who is ahead in outer space, but you can be faster in the atmosphere." This shows how good his escape technique is. Nanling smiled and shook his head and said, "But isn't that cheating? Let's not talk about this. Can I catch fish in this creek?" Mo nodded and said, "Of course you can, but you can only fish in the bay where our property is located, and you can't cross the border." Nanling's eyes lit up. "This is good." He immediately said, "Okay, you go back and clean up first, I'll go catch 2 fish." As he said that, he went to find tools with great interest. Mo hesitated a little. She couldn't understand these little boys. Why were they so happy just to catch a fish? She shook her head without thinking too much, and went back to her room to be stunned for a while. Suddenly, she remembered that he went to catch fish to cook for her, and she couldn't help but smile. She thought about what Nanling had prepared when he made the pickled fish, and immediately began to prepare. She prepared what she could prepare by herself, and bought what she could buy. Before long, the scarce seasonings at home were gathered. When Nanling finally came back with a big fish covered in mud, he found that Mo was wearing an apron and packing things to prepare food. He felt a sense of unreality when he saw this. Seeing him in a daze, Mo asked, "What's wrong with you?" Nanling subconsciously said what was in his heart. "I just didn't expect that I'm no longer alone." Mo rolled his eyes at him, as if he didn't want to pay attention to him. But in Nanling's eyes, she was clearly glowing with a pink light. Then he looked down at himself. Well, he was also pink and pretty. He handled the big, plump fish with a smile, and then showed off his cooking skills. The pickled fish should be served with rice. The rice purchased on the Chew gift star was soft, sticky, fragrant, and even had some spiritual energy. It could be called spiritual rice. After eating this meal, not only Mo enjoyed it, but he also felt that he enjoyed it very much. Sure enough, it's not that you can't enjoy good things in this era, but you need a higher platform and a higher price to enjoy delicious ingredients. In this way, Nanling couldn't help but think too much. Mo bit his chopsticks and asked, "What are you thinking about?" Nanling said, "I'm just thinking about food and clothing in this era." Mo didn't understand. Nanling sighed and said, "I found that in this era, there are very simple and crude foods that can meet the basic needs of the human body. As long as people are willing to work hard and have self-care ability, they will not be afraid of having nothing to eat. But if you want to eat something good, even if it's just a little better, the price will rise sharply. Now we can eat fresh fish and delicious fruits, which is the top enjoyment, but in ancient times when everyone had not yet left the mother planet, these were things that everyone could eat at a low cost." Mo was also surprised that Nanling would think about such things. She said, "Do you want to change the status quo?" Nanling shook his head and said, "Why should I think about that?" Mo said, then why are you worrying about it? Eat fish. Nanling honestly said it was indeed not suitable for him to think about such profound things. Then he mentioned another thing. Sister, can the water in our house be used to trap a net? Mo asked. What are you doing with this? Nanling said. Of course I raise fish for myself, raise more fish for my sister to eat. Mo said unhappily. You can make your own decisions on this matter. That's fine. But Mo was obviously shy. Nanling nodded with a smile, and then thought about what to plant in the fish pond. Yes, such an honest and trustworthy child must plant some lotus flowers for viewing. But are there still lotus flowers these days? Nanling was curious for a while, and then browsed online and found that there were indeed some for sale, but the finished products were expensive, while the seeds were cheaper. He felt a pain in his heart when he saw it, and thought about putting it in the shopping cart and buying it later when he had spare money. Then he thought of something and asked, then if there are wild delicacies on the mountain behind us, will we use them? Mo said, don't worry, the whole mountain belongs to the property, you can do whatever you want. Nanling was very happy to hear this. He said, then I have to buy some seeds to plant. Mo asked, why do you need to plant yourself when you can just buy what you want to eat? Nanling said, the finished products are expensive. If we plant them ourselves, we only need to pay for the first seed purchase. Then we can plant them ourselves. Isn't that great? Mo said helplessly, do you know how many expensive equipment are needed to take care of the fields? Nanling was at a loss. He asked, what else do you need? Mo said, first of all, we need to breed seeds. There are special breeding and germination equipment. Then each plant needs a specific climate to grow well. This requires a corresponding weather controller. There are also many types of equipment for subsequent processing. You can't just spread seeds on the ground to grow good crops. Nanling was even more confused. He looked up at the sky speechlessly. In his opinion, this ancient star with 4 seasons of spring is already the largest greenhouse. Why do we need a greenhouse? So, to what extent has the pursuit of excellence in this era reached? He said, well, forget it for now. Nanling scratched his head helplessly. He didn't feel comfortable asking Mo for money to buy seeds. He suddenly realized one thing, that is, he didn't have the ability to make money on this ancient star. Could he really only be a gigolo? No, this is absolutely not possible. He had to find a way to make money. But how should he make money? He hesitated. Register the copyright of his own magic and charge royalties? This is a good idea, but the mainstream of the ancient domain is fire magic after all. If he wants to sell his wind magic, I'm afraid not many people will be willing to take it over. His own essence and energy refining method will definitely have a good harvest. However, he felt that this essence and energy refining method was jointly developed by him and Mo, and he shouldn't register it himself. It would be too ugly to wheat it. And to be honest, this essence and energy method requires a very high human character. Mo and Fanny are both girls of outstanding people who can practice it. Try someone else. If there is a problem with the practice, he will be the unlucky one. At this time, Nanling realized one more thing, that is, all the skills and secrets of this era pursue universality and safety. If not, I'm afraid that under the unrestrained infusion of spiritual power, I'm afraid that everyone will go astray. Nanling began to speculate that in terms of skills alone, this era may not be as good as the ancient times, because the practice of this era is safe, but it is also equivalent to a comprehensive castration of these skills to ensure that the powerful people who practice can obtain the maximum safety. The most magical divine mind of the cultivator is even a tool that cannot be abused here, which is evident. In this way, Nanling knew what he should do next. Violate the rules of practice in this era, he wants to go back to the past. Chapter 190. Practice and Enlightenment. How did the ancient practitioners practice? Nanling began to ponder after he had cleared the dishes. He thought a lot. He did not put on the pure faith, but came to the cliff above the house with a thought in his mind. What he saw was a small bamboo forest, swaying in the breeze of the ancient star. He thought for a while, and then sat cross-legged on the cliff. Then he turned off the wisdom core, auxiliary instrument, and spirit furnace, and then slowly comprehended and practiced. This is to eliminate all external interference, and only use one's own ability to perceive, gather, and refine spiritual power. The spiritual energy of this world is rich and unique. Nanling only felt that his body was constantly washed by a breeze, and the whole person was a lot more transparent. The wind spiritual power in his body naturally started to operate, which was already a habit. And he used his flowing wind talent to blend into the surrounding mountain wind, so that his mind drifted along the endless wind around him. His consciousness also turned into the wind, drifting back and forth, circling in the air. At this moment, he began to have many insights into the image of wind, and felt very comfortable and happy. The night of Chuxing is unique. If the surrounding lights are turned off and it is pitch black, then looking up at the sky, you can see two bright moons, which are the two satellites of Chuxing. There are also stars in the sky, but this starlight does not come from the stars in the sky, but from the lights of the space stations and airports around Chuxing. Under the illumination of those lights, the entire night sky is like a huge beast hidden in the depths. The vaguely visible outlines will make people feel a little scared after looking at it for a long time. This is the starry sky of Chuxing, which makes people feel full of the shock of modern civilization and some hidden fear. Nanling practiced peacefully under such a night sky, and then found many artificial traces on this planet. He did not see any artificial facilities, but the induction in the wind told him that all this was planned. The wind he felt was controlled by multiple meteorological facilities, so that there was always a cool breeze on this planet. This is because he felt that the wind was slow where it should be fast, and there was wind where there should be no wind. These anomalies made Nanling feel very awkward and uncomfortable, and he felt that he could not integrate into the perception of the wind at all. He was a little annoyed, just because of this incompatibility. But then he found that it seemed that because of this incompatibility, he could clearly perceive the chaos of the wind spirit in this artificial airflow. Indeed, the wind spirit was chaotic, because the airflow here was different from what they should have. But it was precisely because of this incompatibility that Nanling was more likely to discover the existence of these spirits and the characteristics they wanted to express. Then when he simulated the wind around him according to the characteristics of these spirits, these wind spirits would naturally gather around him to show their appearance. Nanling really didn't expect that on this planet full of artificial interference, he seemed to be more likely to have insights. I don't know if this was done intentionally by the people at the Gu family, or if this scene was caused unintentionally. Now thinking back, this era is said to be a great era of technology and cultivation, but how many cultivators can truly comprehend nature and learn from nature? It is probably not that they don't know, but that the cultivators of this era have long been accustomed to the environment transformed by technology. They mostly regard spiritual power as a tool and cultivation as a means, so how can they sincerely comprehend this law of nature? Maybe there are people who suddenly wake up, but how many such people are there? Moreover, the obstacles of knowledge and understanding have been formed. How many people can really calm down and comprehend? Nanling was aimlessly guessing in his heart, but at this time, his understanding of wind magic was endless. The next morning, Mo found that Nanling did not go back to the house to rest all night, so she had no choice but to look for him. As a result, she found that he even turned off his intelligence core and other things, and her heart was suddenly panicked. She quickly dressed up, and then took off to explore from a high altitude. As a result, she saw Nanling just after flying over the height of the cliff. At this time, Nanling was sitting cross-legged, but he was floating in the air. This is not a difficult task in the world, and the spiritual power can naturally lift up one's body. But the key is that Nanling's body is suspended in the air at this time, but there is no trace of spiritual power running, or he seems to be completely integrated into the surrounding existence. Mo's mask was untied, revealing eyes with a little starlight. At this moment, Nanling has stopped breathing, but the airflow around him is circling back and forth, as if replacing his breathing. It was not until Mo appeared that the surrounding airflow was messed up, and then blew away in all directions. Mo only felt a very fresh breeze brushing against her cheek, just like a lover caressing her face, making her feel a little itchy. Nanling opened his eyes, and then stretched his legs in a trance to stand up, and his suspended body naturally dropped, so that the moment he put his legs down, he could stand up effortlessly. He looked at Mo and said with some embarrassment, "Did I waste time?" Mo shook his head and said, "No, there is still some time. Go wash up quickly and I will make breakfast for you." Then he fell back to the ground. Nanling scratched his head, still a little dazed. However, the gains from this night's perception were already very huge. His understanding of wind skills could even be said to have reached another level. After turning on the intelligence core, auxiliary instrument and spirit furnace again, he looked at his attributes and was speechless. His wind control skills still showed LV9, but he felt that he had obviously surpassed this level. Then he suddenly realized that how could intelligent technology like the intelligence core understand the wind spirit perception? Of course it couldn't perceive it. So this wind control skill above LV9 is probably beyond the scope of its quantification. At this time, Mo, who had finished breakfast, sat down in front of him, and the two ate together. Eat without talking. Nanling consciously cleaned up the dishes and prepared to wash them, but heard Mo say, "I'm going to Fanny's place today. I haven't been with her for the past 2 days. This guy is about to cry in front of me." Mo has been with him for the past 2 days. Nanling asked curiously, "Do you need me to go with you?" He always remembered that he was an employee. Mo blinked, and then said in an inexplicable tone, "No need. This is a girls' party. It's not appropriate for you to go. Besides, school will start tomorrow, so you should prepare well." Nanling thought it made sense, so he didn't care too much. After watching Mo go out, Nanling began to think about it. There is a bamboo forest in the back mountain and a fish pond in front of the door. What can he think of with this combination? What else can he do? He immediately cut bamboo in the back mountain and looked for earthworms in the mud in front of the door. Order industrial-grade silk thread that is long enough and tough enough on the line, and add an iron hook that he broke off at random. The last and most important thing is that his wife is not at home. Isn't the man's fun complete? Chapter 191 Making a drinking partner. After finding a stone pier to sit down at the bend of the river, Nanling cast out the fishing hook leisurely, and felt that life was so beautiful. Watching the fish float up and down in the water, his mind naturally immersed in the surrounding mountain scenery, and he began to comprehend again. He has had a lot of insights recently, probably because he had been practicing mechanically before and suppressed his talent in this area. Now that he has come into contact with this retro practice method, he can't stop at all. What he is doing now is actually constantly familiarizing himself with the characteristics of wind spiritual power. This is just like making friends. Only by communicating and getting along more can we know each other and then know each other and accompany each other. Can we even go from friends to partners, and never leave each other and be in harmony with each other? Nanling thought this was wonderful, and it was exactly the same as the current situation of his life. So he was more focused when comprehending. The wind blew on the water, and ripples appeared. Nanling had no thoughts, no ideas, and felt that the whole person was completely empty and integrated with the world. But at this moment, there was a sound of footsteps coming from behind. He didn't need to turn around to see a person looking down from the top of the cliff behind him. Nanling didn't move his mouth, but the voice had already been heard, circling around the man's ears, saying, "Excuse me, guest, what are you doing here?" The man only felt that there was a voice circling around him, but it was impossible to trace the source of the sound. He looked around but found nothing, so he lowered his head and asked, "Who are you?" Nanling said, "I'm the owner of this place." The man didn't know what expression he had when he heard it, but just said, "No one lived here before, and I remember that the owner of this family should be a young girl, right?" Nanling's heart moved when he heard it and said, "You're a neighbor, right? My husband and I just moved here after returning from a long journey." The man didn't speak for a while, and suddenly said, "Can I come over to visit?" Nanling said cheerfully, "It's great to have a distinguished guest visiting. Just come to the river to find me, I'm fishing by the river." The man didn't waste any words, and landed beside Nanling in an instant. However, the landing noise was quite loud, and the fish was scared away. Nanling had already put away his rod. He smiled and said, holding a bucket of fish, "What's your name, guest?" He looked at the visitor, and saw that he had a square face and thick blue hair. Although his eyes looked at him sharply, he still gave people a simple and honest feeling. The man said, "My friends call me Zhin, you can just call me Zhin." Nanling nodded and said, "Okay, Mr. Zhin, I just caught 3 fat fish. My wife is not at home today, why don't I cook a new dish for you?" Zhin seemed quite surprised by the invitation. He said, "Well, I want to try your cooking skills." Nanling replied, "My name is Nanlin, you can call me Nanling or Xiaonan." He actually welcomed this guest. After all, there are powerful people on this ancient star, and being able to establish good relationships will always be useful. And it's quite lonely to prepare these new dishes by myself, so it's good to have someone to accompany me. Nanling is a guy with full survival ability. When he first came to the noble land, he must have opened the door to welcome guests and took out all his social skills to find out and adapt to the current environment first. When everything is familiar, he can do his own things at ease, and he doesn't like to deal with strangers unless it is necessary. At this time, Zhin is his social object. He very happily invited Zhin to stay for dinner, and he quickly processed the big fish he had just caught. First, clean the belly of the fish, and then cut off the fish head with a knife, and then split the fish head into 2 halves, put onion, ginger, cooking wine, and then put pepper and chopped pepper, and a plate of chopped pepper fish head is ready. The remaining fish body is not wasted, it is directly cut into small pieces for processing, and then thrown into hot oil to control the temperature and slowly fry, and it is another fried fish. The preparation stage of the ingredients is the most troublesome in this process. Fortunately, Nanling's thinking ability has been enhanced and his movements are extremely fast. Everything looks very skillful. Anyway, Zhen just thought it was very interesting. When the fried fish slices were put into the frying pan, the fragrant smell came out all of a sudden, and Zhen swallowed hard at the time. He said, "This must taste delicious." Nanling heard this and said with some pride, "Of course, it's a pity that there is no good wine, otherwise this dish would be just right with wine." "Wine?" Zhen's eyes lit up, and then asked, "How about strong wine?" Nanling said, "The stronger, the better." Zhen cheered and said, "That's great, wait a minute, I have good wine at home, come on." He ran away in a hurry. Nanling also laughed and shook his head when he saw this. He didn't expect to meet a wine lover here. After a while, Zhen really came with a big jar of good wine. There was wine in this era, and this kind of drink that can numb people's nerves is still popular. At this time, Nanling's fish head and fish fillet were ready. The fish head had bright red chopped peppers on one side and green peppers on the other. After pouring boiling oil on it, the fragrance immediately made people drool. After Nanling was ready, she said, "Okay, we can start eating." Zhen couldn't help it anymore and picked up his chopsticks. The fried fish fillet was fried until even the bones were crispy. It was fresh, fragrant and crispy, and it was the best to eat with wine. The fish head was also spicy and delicious, making people sweat and feel comfortable. Zhen ate the food and drank the wine, and by the way, he filled a glass for Nanling and said, "Come on, let's drink together." So after a glass of good wine, they immediately felt that their relationship had become closer. Nanling was also quite surprised and said, "It's really good wine." Zhen said, "Right, good wine should be drunk well." Nanling actually loved drinking in her previous life, but she didn't like to drink the kind of blended wine, and she wouldn't drink too much. She hasn't had a few serious drinks in this life, and meeting Zhen can be considered a match. So after a while of toasting each other, the two of them started to treat each other like brothers. "Brother, your cooking skills are really unique. Nowadays, not many people study cooking like you do. And I see that your dishes are very retro, they are all old dishes, right?" Zhen was a little drunk at this time, but he should be sober. Nanling was also intrigued. He said, "Of course, my wife loves to eat fish, so I have specially figured out some fish cooking methods. But she is also a lady from a wealthy family. She must be familiar with the mainstream fish cooking methods of this era, so I thought these retro cooking methods might make her happy." Zhen turned his head in surprise. "Oh? How come I didn't know?" Nanling looked at him drunkenly and said, "How could you know?" "I only found out after living together for a while. Because the eldest lady she follows also loves to eat fish, she has actually always hidden this preference very well. It has only been revealed when she is with me." "So that's the case," Zhen whispered to himself, and then asked, "It seems that you love her very much." Nanling felt that she had said enough. She knew that she was talking too much now, but she just couldn't help but want to say it. OSASJASU-11 WY 4.0 Euro copyright PSDs. Okay. He shook his head and smiled and said, "It's good to have this awareness. You're a good boy." Nanling shook his head and said, "No, you just called me brother, why are you acting like an elder now?" Zhen laughed and said, Okay, we'll be brothers after drinking. But it's almost enough for today. I'll come again another day. I have good wine at home. I'll invite some good brothers to come together if I have the chance." Nanling said, "Okay, I can try out a few more dishes and let my brothers try them." So both the host and the guest had a great time, and they were brothers again. Chapter 192 Virtual War Competition. Nanling's drinking partner said goodbye and left after eating and drinking to his heart's content. Before leaving, he really called him brother and brother happily. "Brother, prepare a fishing rod for me. Next time I come, I will try the leisure of fishing by the water." Nanling clasped his fists and said, "Brother, be careful on the road, don't get lost." He said goodbye all the way and finally sent him away. When Nanling returned to his house, he took a look at the mess in his house and asked the housekeeping robot to clean it up. Then he went to his bedroom to take a shower. The energy in his body evaporated and he sobered up. It's really good wine. He was still savoring it. The wine is really good, and it can even be called spiritual wine. That's why it nourishes people. After drinking this meal, Nanling found that not only his cultivation level increased by 10%, but also his energy increased greatly, and his whole body was full of vitality. He felt that this was really worthy at being a powerful class. Everything he casually took at was good stuff, which was incredible. After taking a shower and resting for a while, I saw a car parked in front of my house. The car door opened, and Mo came out first with a lot of things in her hands, followed by Fanny, and finally Li Ji, who was carrying a lot of things. Nanling came out and smiled. "So you went shopping?" He took the things in Mo's hand. Mo nodded at him, and when she was about to hand the things over, she suddenly frowned and sniffed and said, "Did you drink at home?" Nanling said, "Well, there was a guest at home today, who said he was a neighbor from that community, so I stayed to entertain him." Mo glanced at Nanling's deck record, and then said, "Did the guest bring the wine?" Nanling said, "I cooked the dishes, and he brought the wine." Mo was about to say something, and then heard Fanny yelling, "Don't check here, let's take the things in and set them up quickly, you don't have anything in your house yet." Fanny yelled and winked at Nanling, as if to say, "Brother, I'm covering for you, okay?" Nanling was speechless. Is it necessary to make such a big deal about this matter? It makes him look like he really did something bad. Mo was helpless when she saw this. She was just asking casually, "Who asked you, a young lady, to sell favors here?" She said, "Okay, there are still many furnitures on the way, and Fanny bought a lot of food, and they are going to have a small gathering here today." Nanling understood and said, "Okay, I will prepare the food, and you guys clean up the room." So everyone divided the work. Soon the things were delivered. Nanling looked and found that most of them were already finished or dishes that only needed simple processing, so he didn't do anything extra. He simply processed them and served them on the plates. The three girls also cleaned up the room quickly. What Nanling didn't expect was that Fanny also asked for a bedroom next to Mo's room, and Li Ji asked for a room opposite Nanling. This small building has 2 floors, each of which is about 500 square meters. Mo's room is on the 2nd floor. Previously, the two of them tacitly set the 2nd floor as Mo's area, and Nanling lived on the 1st floor. He would not go to the 2nd floor casually. This is also where Nanling makes Mo feel at ease. He really does a lot of details that make people feel at ease. This is not on the Zhuoxia. The 4 people are not in the relationship between the captain and the crew. The atmosphere is harmonious and casual. Nanling glanced at the silent Li Ji, and asked in surprise, "Aunt Li Ji, why don't you eat? I remember you used to like eating." Li Ji sighed and said, "It's boring. I used to eat just to satisfy my taste buds, but without the need to survive, no matter how realistic the taste is, it will eventually get boring." Nanling said with a serious expression, "This is not a good sign. Indeed, sensory degradation has always been a major defect of cyborgs. Because the original organs are completely replaced by artificial prostheses, the brain's senses to the outside world are mostly stimulated by electric currents, which can easily cause the cyborg's desires and needs in all aspects to drop sharply, and eventually become something as cold as a machine AI. This is what Nanling is worried about. At the same time, he also knows that human desires are the key to the success of the digital life path. Li Ji laughed dumbly and said, "I don't need you, a little brat, to worry about me. I just don't have much interest in eating. But I've been addicted to strong liquor recently. Do you have any?" Nanling understood instantly after hearing this. Perhaps alcohol, which can numb the brain, is the best medicine for Li Ji now. He took a look and took a half-drunk container and said, "Here, these are all good wines. They were left by a drinking buddy I just made today." Li Ji didn't doubt him. She poured herself a glass and drank it all. Then her eyes lit up and said, "This wine is awesome." Then she drank it with a clang. This is a spiritual wine. It is normal for a normal person to drink a glass and then vomit. What's more, Li Ji only has 1 brain. Nanling was speechless. He didn't expect that Li Ji was so generous, but it turned out that she was just a weak drinker. He was a little relieved and said, "It's okay. At least she won't be transformed into AI in this state. That's enough." As he finished speaking, he found that Mo was looking at the wine container with a strange look. He asked, "What's wrong?" Mo shook his head and said, "Nothing. I just didn't expect your drinking buddy to be so generous. This is Kingsa wine brewed with an ancient recipe. My family bought a bottle. The price is not cheap. If Mo could say it was not cheap, it would be a sky-high price for Nanling." But Nanling didn't care about it. He put the wine away and said, "Anyway, my drinking buddy didn't say he wanted to take it back, so I'll put it away first." He said he would bring better wine next time. Fanny gave a thumbs up and said, not bad. I didn't expect our Xionan to be able to make friends with big shots now. Nanling smiled and shook his head and didn't say much. He just asked, by the way, boss, what are your plans next? He didn't mean anything. He just asked Fanny about her future plans. However, Fanny seemed to be touched by something, and she raised her voice and said, me? Of course we have to continue our adventure. We haven't been to Tianzing Star yet. Very good, his dream of being a great pioneer is still there. But soon she became discouraged and said, but I have an agreement with my father. At least I have to wait until he regains control of the fleet before he can let me go out again. Nanling couldn't understand this logic. But Mo said it in one sentence. I'm afraid it's the master's delaying tactic, but on the other hand, if you still insist, Fanny, then the fleet he controls will be the most important guaranteed force, just like he did before. The implication is that if Fanny encounters trouble again, Ye Chen can lead the fleet to rescue her. Nanling had to admit that this is very likely. He is really a father who loves his daughter. Fanny said a little irritably, but if I stay in Chugif Star all the time, I will suffocate to death sooner or later. Nanling and Mo both tried to comfort her, saying that there was no other way. But they all underestimated Fanny's thinking. She scratched her head, thinking that since it was a rare occasion for everyone to get together, they might as well play some games. But then she suddenly realized, punched her fist and said, yes, why didn't I think of it? We can play games. What did you think of? Nanling was at a loss. Mo's face changed, and it was obvious that she realized something. She said, Galaxy Fairy Virtual War Competition. Galaxy Fairy. Nanling immediately searched the internet for information, and found that this was a game that had recently become popular in Chuxing or the entire human upper class. Because it simulated various forms of scenes absolutely realistically, many armies even used it as a training tool for commanders at all levels. And Fanny mentioned this super simulated war game at this time because of the opening of this Galaxy Fairy Virtual War Competition. According to legend, the ancient domain can select 3 of its own teams to go to the Star Federation to participate in the final round of the competition. For Fanny, isn't this just about being able to go out and run wild? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 193 New Colleagues. Galaxy Shirank is said to be a game that has reached the pinnacle in some aspects. Fanny said, I have decided to form a fairy team, and you're the members. Mo said with some embarrassment, this game has only appeared in recent years, and we have been wandering around for the past 2 years. We are not familiar with this game. Fanny guaranteed, don't worry, almost everything in this game is based on reality. The only unrealistic thing is that it limits everyone's computing power and ability. Nanling asked in surprise, how is it limited? Fanny said, this game is directly connected to the smart core, but it will not use the computing power of the smart core, but will allocate standard computing power in the game. Nanling was quite surprised to hear this. He looked at the sleepy Liji and asked, then can't the cyborg also play this game? Mo confirmed, yes, this game has a limit on computing power, but it allows all people in the strengthening direction to play together. I just took a look, and this game also has a limit on personal strength, which is a good thing. This is to hone people's skills in all aspects as much as possible, which is very good. Nanling nodded after hearing this, thinking that if this was really the case, then this game was really good. Fanny said, yes, you all go check the information quickly and then load this game. Fanny looked at Nanling and said, don't worry, I'll buy you the secret code for this game, just treat it as the work of the Juxia crew. Nanling immediately perked up, and he was no longer sleepy when he mentioned work. Speaking of which, he still has a job with an annual salary of more than 300,000 yuan with his boss Fanny, so it's not completely without income. He immediately perked up, thinking about it this way, as long as he worked for 10 years, he could pay off all his debts, not bad. After entering the working state, he quickly searched for this game. Sure enough, he quickly collected a huge amount of information. He chose to load the game, and saw that the load of his Ruang Xinu jumped up a bit, reaching 81%. He was a little helpless at the time. But fortunately, it didn't help for long, and the load value dropped to about 75% again, because the game of this Galaxy Shirank had been loaded. He did not stay at the login interface, because Fanny had already bought the secret code for him, so he could enter directly. Even in the character interface, he could communicate with Fanny and Mo in the system and in reality. He found that the load occupied by this game was really not large, and he could even distract himself to do other things while playing the game, as long as his mind was vast enough. Fanny said, "As for the gameplay of this game, it is mainly divided into individual battles and legion battles. There is nothing much to say about individual battles. It is similar to the regular leveling and equipment brushing games. We don't play that. The key is the Legion battle. This Legion battle requires at least 5 people to form an army, which includes interstellar wars, production, and management. It is the epitome of various games." Nanling nodded repeatedly after listening, and he said, "So the core theme of this game is also on this Legion battle?" Fanny said, "Yes, I will create a Legion now." Not long after the voice fell, the character that Nanling had just created received an invitation from the Legion named Zhuoxia. Nanling immediately agreed, and then he immediately entered the working state. This game is really not much different from reality. He now appears in the bridge of a starship, and all kinds of instruments are running on it, some displaying surrounding resources, and some displaying its own material reserves. Fanny couldn't wait to say, "Let's play quickly, and you will know everything after playing once." "Wait, I'll pull Liji in." After the voice fell, Liji came in a moment later. Her mind was drunk, but her consciousness suddenly came here sober. This made Liji speechless. She wanted to enjoy the feeling of being drunk, but she suddenly became sage mode. However, this also means that her thinking has actually begun to exist outside the biological brain, which is a big step in the evolution of digital life. She figured out the current situation at a very fast speed, and then soon realized the key. We are still missing one person here, right? Fanny was busy with something at this time, and then quickly pulled another person in and said, "Okay, now everyone is here." The person who came in looked quite young, wearing his military uniform, and looked meticulous. Fanny introduced him. "His name is Thongship. My father sent him to follow me. I have no choice, but with him, we have 5 people. Thongship looked around and said to Fanny and Mo, Miss Lingy. Then he looked at Nanling and Lei Ji, but he was not interested in knowing their names. He just nodded slightly and said, "You are my 2 colleagues." Nanling and Lei Ji both disliked this man. Fanny said, "Thongship, since you were sent by your father, then tell me what you were good at." Thongship nodded and said, "Miss, this year is my last semester at the Commander Academy of Chugyu Academy. I'm best at combat command, logistics management, and auxiliary management. If I fight on the front line, I'm even better at defense deployment and commanding the defense line." Nanling was shocked when she heard this. This colleague's abilities covered a wide range. He immediately felt that Mo's eyes became sharper. Indeed, the range of Thongship's abilities overlapped with hers. Was he here to steal her job? However, Mo nodded coldly and said, "It sounds good. In this case, our Zhuoxia army can be officially established. After that, we'd better get familiar with everyone's abilities and discuss how to play that game." Fanny was in the mood. This was her favorite part. So she said, "Okay, let's start right away." Thongshi also nodded and said, "It should be so." So the 5 of them couldn't wait to start a game. This is the AI human-machine mode of the Legion War. The opponent has a strong intelligence, and the Zhuoxia army must first confirm one thing. That is, there are 5 battle positions in this Legion War. Among them, the starting chief position appears directly in the base at the beginning of the battle. If you want to summon the people on the battle position to enter the battlefield later, you need to pay resources. Nanling studied it and always felt that this game has a strong sense of real-time strategy. Then, as the boss and the eldest lady, Fanny took the lead in choosing the starting chief in the first game, which was also a demonstration for Nanling and the others. Chapter 194. This new member is too proud. In the core battle mode of the game Galaxy Fairy, the starting position is definitely a very important position. Because Nanling saw that after Fanny determined the starting position, she first had to allocate resources. There are 4 major categories of resources, namely energy, materials, production machinery, and combat machinery. And there are many categories in these 4 major categories of resources that can be allocated, and Fanny's allocation is the simplest and crudest. Energy, no materials or production machinery are needed, and then all combat machinery chooses the most balanced assault type. Then at the beginning of the game, Fanny's Zhuoxia base appeared in a dense asteroid belt. The materials in this asteroid belt are extremely rich and dense, which is abnormal. Of course, no one studies whether the map of a game is reasonable. Anyway, Zhuoxia base is on one of the asteroids, and then Fanny and her combat machinery appear together. After she entered the scene, she did not hesitate at all, and directly started to jump up in this map with her assault troops. This is a look of not wanting her own base at all, which is really speechless. Nanling did find something strange, and then said, "It seems that this game also has a time acceleration function." Thongchip didn't even look at him and didn't answer. It was Mo who answered, "This is actually a hidden threshold. If people with poor thinking ability are in this time acceleration, they may find it difficult to respond, and eventually be at a loss and fail miserably." Nanling nodded and said, "Then this time acceleration is," Mo answered, 10 times, currently it is 10 times accelerated. Thongchu then said, "In other words, if you want to make achievements in this game, you need at least 10 times the thinking ability of ordinary people. Miss and Miss Limmy are fine, but you two are civilians, can you do it? This is being looked down upon." Nanling didn't say a word about it, and he would show his ability naturally when the time comes. Li Ji said with a cold face, "Then let's wait and see." Fanny's game was quickly completed. She led her team of combat robots to rush around, and finally she was lucky enough to find that target before the opponent's base was developed, and then she destroyed the AI opponent with a charge. After seeing the work victory and ending a game, Fanny felt a little dull and felt that she had not played enough. Because for her operation, it was obvious that the essence of the game had not been shown, and it was already over. Next was Mo's turn. Mo's allocation of resources when she entered the game was much more meticulous. She chose to split energy and materials in half, and production machinery and combat machinery in half. Among them, the various material choices and machinery choices were a lot of choices. After the game entered the game, Mo immediately arranged defenses with combat machinery, and then organized with production machinery, and then extracted materials around the asteroid to replenish energy and materials. Nanling watched with relish, thinking that Mo had shown the charm of this game. It was actually very reckless to rush and attack like Fan. This map is very large. If the opponent's position cannot be determined in a short time, then once the window period is missed, the initial strength that Fan had brought will be broken by the opponent. Mo is a model of steady development. After developing for a period of time, he immediately pulled Nanling into the battlefield and made him the second player. As soon as he was pulled in, he was assigned a task, which was to scout the enemy's position. Nanling took the order, unfolded his wingsuit and took off directly, without carrying any combat machinery. His exploration was very determined, that is, he went directly to the diagonal line where his base was located, and then returned in a clockwise arc. The wingsuit's acceleration was turned on to the maximum. He spent about 2 hours without encountering the enemy, and then immediately turned around and continued to scout. This time he was very lucky and encountered the enemy directly. Nanling asked, "The target has been found and marked on the star map. What should I do next?" Mo had summoned 3 generals at this time, who was the Red Stone. Mo said, "Red Stone is responsible for allocating resources for the production of combat formations. I need you to contain the enemy's forces as much as possible while completing the reconnaissance." Nanling understood this. Then he took advantage of the opponent's defenses that had not yet taken shape and launched a very tricky sneak attack on the production machinery of the base over there. After a series of destruction, he was naturally surrounded by the opponent. But at this time, he showed his super flying ability brought by his special flying certificate. He really shuttled back and forth in the barrage and jumped sideways repeatedly, using the complex terrain of the asteroid belt to easily get rid of the opponent's pursuit. Once he got rid of it, he immediately killed back and continued to tease, and he made the opponent's base restless. After all, it was just an AI, what ability could it have? Until the opponent also sent a Legion warrior, his actions were slightly restrained. But this had bought enough time for Mo. Mo summoned Li Ji as the 4th battle position to manage logistics on her behalf. Finally, when a terrible army was fully formed, Fanny, who was bored waiting, was summoned as the 5th battle position. What followed was a fierce and large-scale crushing battle. The asteroid belt was suddenly filled with various space fighters or small starships, rushing towards the opponent's base. The opponent's base did have a certain combat effectiveness after Nanling stopped harassing, but it was quickly destroyed under the suppression of such an absolute advantage in troops. Mo's battle was over, which fully demonstrated her prudent and thorough characteristics. Among them, the method of using Nanling to do reconnaissance and defense at work was a stroke of genius. After the battle was over, Thongchip finally looked at Nanling in the preparation space. He said, "I didn't expect you to be an ace pilot." Nanling smiled but said nothing. Fanny was full of resentment. Mo put herself in the last place to be summoned, which made her lonely. Anyway, the next game was hosted by Thongship. Thongship's resource allocation was similar to Mo's, but the ratio of combat machinery to production machinery was 4:6. His defense composed of 40% combat machinery was very tight, which reflected his talent. The second combat position he summoned was Mo. Mo's ability had left a very deep impression on him before, and he felt that he and Mo were absolutely compatible. Everything was almost a replica of Mo's command. However, Thongship did not go to explore the enemy's situation, but waited for the enemy to come and consume them with his own strict defense arrangement. He and Mo used their talents together, and while using the defense line to consume the opponent, they also summoned Fanny and Nanling one after another. However, he did not summon Li Ji in the end, so he withdrew the defense line and launched a counter-attack, breaking the AI that consumed too much power in the attack. It was a win, but even Fanny realized one thing. This redstone obviously despised Li Ji. In response, Nanling's eyes could not help but darken. Chapter 195 The commander is confirmed. After Thongship finished a round, he said frankly, now we all know our respective abilities, and we can assign responsibilities. He obviously didn't think it was necessary for Nanling and Li Ji to open a round separately. In his mind, the rushing tactics of the young lady Fanny at the beginning were completely unacceptable. He and Mo were the only two competitors for the first battle position who was supposed to coordinate the overall situation. Unexpectedly, Fanny shook her head seriously and said, Li Ji and Xiaonan haven't tried it yet. Let's talk about it after they have tried it. This is a very considerate boss. She obviously noticed the problems caused by the appearance of Thongship, a newcomer in the team. However, her kindness was rejected by Li Ji. She said, forget it. I'm only good at logistics distribution and intelligence reconnaissance, and I am not qualified for the all-round needs of the first battle position. Mo also persuaded her again, but Li Ji was still quite persistent. Because she knew that she was definitely not as good as Mo and Thongship in controlling the opening, so there was no need to embarrass herself. Thongship didn't care about Li Ji at this time, just looked at Nanling and asked, what about you? His tone was not so arrogant and disdainful. In his opinion, Nanling had already shown the potential of an ace pilot, which made him a valuable person in his eyes. Nanling nodded and said, okay, then I'll try. Thongship didn't care. Fanny was a little happier and started the game again. However, Nanling's opening operation was absolutely against everyone's common sense. Because he divided energy and materials into 30% and 70%, and chose production machinery instead of any combat machinery. This game has just been launched in recent years, and even the Legion battle is a new feature that has just been launched in recent years. Because the values of all aspects of this game are the same as reality, everyone's opening is normal, and no rebellious routines have been studied. Then, Nanling now showed them what rebellious means. That is to use the resources at the beginning to quickly produce the second general. Fanny was summoned out so unexpectedly. She was surprised to be on the field so soon, and then asked, what do you want me to do? Nanling pointed casually and said, do what you want to do. Fanny and I immediately understood. I understand, go and harass them, right? Nanling nodded. If you can't beat them, run away, don't force it. Fanny and I ran away without looking back. Nanling asked his production machinery to quickly collect materials. Because the energy consumption of production machinery is not as high as that of combat machinery, the current energy is sufficient. And he started to arrange the base defensor with full production capacity at the beginning. This scene made Thongship's face change, because he found that Nanling's defense arrangement was also very strict, not inferior to his previous arrangement at all. And because Fanny and I had already engaged the opponent in front, this premature battle obviously involved too much energy at the enemy, so Nanling had enough time to arrange the defense line, and by the way, he also accumulated a lot of resources, but did not immediately summon the third combat position. At this time, Nanling said, Boss Fanny, come back and fight with the defense line, don't fight alone. At this time, Fanny was obviously unable to fight because of the opponent's development, and was chased by the opponent and fled in a panic. Upon hearing this, he immediately returned to the base and used the defensive facilities set up by Nanling to continue fighting. Nanling chose the candidates for the next 3 generals. The one who was unexpected was Li Ji. Li Ji herself was surprised. She didn't expect that Nanling would choose her in the 3rd place. Nanling said to her gently, Aunt Li Ji, take these startup resources and some production machinery to this location to open a sub-base. Be careful not to be discovered by the opponent's reconnaissance. I believe you can do this with your ability. Li Ji nodded after hearing this, and then immediately took her resources to the location pointed out by Nanling. This operation was definitely unexpected. After all, in this game, the resources are actually endless. There is no need to open a sub-base to collect more resources. You only need to expand the scale of the main base. But Nanling didn't do that. He secretly opened a sub-base when the enemy's attention was completely distracted by the main base's defense line. This is considered to be the best use of Li Ji's strengths, fully utilizing her computing power, and also using her anti-reconnaissance ability to conceal. The plot on Nanling's side seems to be similar to the Tithong ship, which is to consume with tightly organized fortifications. But Nanling's rhythm is much faster. When Nanling summoned the 4th 11 mode directly in Li Ji's subbase, Li Ji had already formed a small-scale assault team. But it was this assault team that directly destroyed the empty enemy base with great momentum, making the enemy's army assembled on the front line instantly useless. Bold arrangement, tight defense, unexpected strategy. Nanling showed her talents to the fullest. At the same time, it also conveyed a message to Thongship. Defensive organization ability. Who doesn't know it? And the subbase that Li Ji quietly fell in a corner of the star map was not exposed until the opponent was completely defeated. This anti-reconnaissance ability is indeed powerful. Of course, the most important thing is, Fanny was very satisfied. She said excitedly, "It's so exciting. It's so exciting to fight like this. It has to be you, Shonen." She was very satisfied. She fought almost from beginning to end without stopping. So she was too lazy to discuss it in a meeting, and directly said, "From now on, the first place to go out, that is, our chief warrior, will be you, Shonen." Thongshi was stunned for a long time. He was not even sent out just now. This feeling of having nothing to do with him was really bad. At the same time, he also understood what Nanling meant. You are not necessarily more useful than Li Ji in this team. However, Thongshi watched in silence as Fanny patted Nanling on the shoulder and directly promised him the position of chief warrior. He had only one thought in his mind: flattering villain, treacherous and cunning. Regarding this point, his cognition was the same as Mo's earlier. Anyway, Fanny knew that she could have fun with Nanling, and that was enough. It was Mo who asked first. "It seems that your tactic of opening a base is very useful. We can study it carefully." At this time, Thongshi put aside his own thoughts and said, "Indeed, this tactic of quickly opening a base is indeed useful. I even think that if the second battle position is replaced by me or Miss Ling, we will be able to establish the advantage faster if we quickly open a base. The only worry is that we are not so cautious. If we encounter an opponent like the eldest lady who likes to go all out, we will be easily defeated." He didn't seem to care about what Nanling expressed through this game. Nanling nodded and said, "So there is no perfect tactic. We have to deal with different situations." Thongshi was a little dissatisfied, and he asked, "What if someone responds with my defensive tactics?" Nanling said, "In that situation, it's an opportunity for us to bring out all our abilities. Me, Mo, Li Ji, and Thongshi can all host a base. We just need to produce combat machinery in an endless supply and constantly compress the opponent's living space, then we can win the battle fairly." Thongshi couldn't help but lower his head to think about it, and then he could only admit, "You're right, it was my own consideration." Nanling said, "Speaking of which, in fact, in my heart, the first summon second combat position should be armed Li Ji, because her reconnaissance ability can help us detect the enemy in the shortest time. Then I can adjust the combat strategy according to the enemy's movements." Fanny was a little unhappy. She always felt that she seemed to be the only shortcoming of this team. However, after a brief thought, she finally sighed and said, "In this case, I think you should decide that Li Ji will be the second player in the battle. We all know the importance of intelligence." After all, she remembered the purpose of playing this game. It was not that she wanted to have fun in this game, but that she wanted to use this opportunity to leave the range of Chuxing. She wanted to go out and have fun. Thongshi didn't say anything about this decision, as if he agreed. Li Ji was very surprised, and her eyes looking at Nanling were full of some unknown meanings. It was a warm feeling. She felt the warmth that Nanling gave her. She knew that the boy who supported her and escaped on the deserted planet that year still kept her in his heart and didn't forget her. This was not a love between a man and a woman, but Li Ji felt that this was even better than the love she had longed for. She longed for love, but she didn't even dare to think about the family-like affection. Because love can be blind, and family affection represents precious mutual trust. Chapter 196A. Bad School. Fanny and Liji simply stayed there that day, and the next day they went to the Tycho 5 space station together. This time, Nanling and Mo simply became mounts together, unfolding the whaling wingsuit and taking off with the two of them. Speaking of which, they were considered illegal passengers, but who told them that the special flight certificate did not specify whether their aircraft could carry people. Anyway, Fanny was shouting that she had to take a special flight certificate, and Liji obviously looked like she was thinking about it. After all, on the Chugi star, being able to fly freely is really enviable. After arriving at the 5 space station where the Chugi Academy is located, Nanling put Liji down first. Liji can be said to be the regional security person in charge of this space station. This was obviously arranged by Gi-chen so that she could take care of Fanny nearby. Fanny and Mo went to the Commander Academy together, and Nanling went to the Cultivation Academy alone. Today is the first day of school, and he wants to listen to what the courses in this academy are like. But when he arrived at the school, he found that there were only a dozen people present. He even thought that he had arrived too early. But after waiting for some time, until a white-haired old professor walked in slowly, Nanling realized that something was wrong. He found that this was really just the case. Classmates, hello, I'm Gi Wanming, the Dean of the School of Cultivation of Chugi Academy. Nanling was alert for a moment, thinking that this might be a respected old senior, and he was looking forward to what this old senior could say. However, the old Professor Gi Wanming said calmly, "Hehe, I know what you were thinking, so I will open up your course permissions, and then you can go online to watch any class you want to take, and we don't have any homework. As long as you hand in your graduation project, I guarantee that you can graduate smoothly." Nanling was numb when he heard it. Why does this sound like a mixed major? And this dean didn't hide it at all, and directly put everything out in the open. Nanling felt quite annoyed at the time, thinking that he had come to the wrong place. He subconsciously began to read the course permissions that had just been opened. This was not a semester's course, but the contents of the entire 5 academic years were all opened. Nanling glanced at it quickly, and suddenly felt at ease again. Because he found the content that interested him, he felt that it was worth it just for these coursework. The old professor said a few simple words, and then said very happily, "Okay, students, I know you were all very busy, now you can go and do your own things." As soon as the voice fell, the students who looked decent got up and left one after another. Nanling found that these people really had no interest in attending classes here, and left without any nostalgia. He felt that these students were probably the group of people among the children of the ancient domain nobles who did not seek to make progress, and their families did not have any requirements for them. "This classmate, why are you still here when they all left?" Gi Wanming asked. Nanling stood up and said, "I really want to learn knowledge." Gi Wanming laughed and shook his head. "If you had come here 1,000 years earlier, you would have really learned something, but forget it now." Nanling was speechless by this joke, and he asked, "Professor, why is that?" Gi Wanming said, "There is no reason, it's just that everyone who invents a good spell prefers to keep it in their own home, rather than taking it out to discuss with classmates and teachers." Nanling was speechless for a moment. He found that in any era, there will always be situations where people cherish their own possessions. Gi Wanming probably saw his disappointment, so he smiled and said, "If you really want to learn, just look at the course for yourself. If you encounter any problems, you can come to the college to find me. I will drink tea in the office here every Wednesday." Nanling heard that this was the only way. When he signed up for the Cultivation College, he thought that this major would not be valued, but he didn't expect it to turn out like this. Then he said, "Then Professor, I have a question now, can I ask you?" Gi Wanming was about to leave, but suddenly stopped and said, "Tell me about it." Nanling said, "What if the spell I invented has a similar function to an existing spell? What should I do?" Gi Wanming said, "Then you need to record the creativity, source and development process of your spell in detail, and we will be responsible for the review. Don't worry, there will be no mistakes. What belongs to you is yours, just distinguish it in the name." Nanling nodded slightly when he heard it, and then asked, "What if I developed another spell based on the spell I have already purchased?" Gi Wanming looked at Nanling seriously this time, and sighed, "It seems that you are serious. If this is the case, you only need to write down the source and deduction process in the spell paper, and then the new spell will also belong to you." Nanling nodded and said, "In this case, I have no problem." Gi Wanming asked unexpectedly, "Don't you ask about the graduation project? Your name is Nanlin, right? I see that you don't have any background, and you only got a passing score when you went to school. I thought you would be very worried about graduation. Nanling asked curiously, what's there to be doubted about? Isn't it just to invent a wind magic when you graduate? I was a little hesitant at first, but now that I've asked the professor, I have a clue. Guanmin was stunned. What do you mean by clue? Nanling said, of course I have a clue about the graduation project. Guanmin felt that the person in front of him was making fun of him. He said, young man, don't talk nonsense. This graduation project is not that easy to complete. Nanling thought about it, and simply made a light screen appear in front of him, and then he started writing directly in front of Guanmin. He copied that format of wind and clouds and wrote a self-created magic that he was very proficient in. Guanmin thought Nanling was just pretending at first. But he couldn't take his eyes away after taking a quick look. The spell that was inspired by gaseous perception and achieved energy refractive index by changing the air density is called refraction. Then combine refraction with breathlock to develop refraction that covers the whole body or an area, also called air shield. Then integrate the concept of the war-wind spell wind shield and incorporate air shield into it. And change it into another defensive spell called atmospheric shield. Wow, Guanmin saw 3 unfamiliar spell names in one paper at once. Nanling's thinking speed is super fast now. His brain is spinning, and the logical and meticulous graphic analysis appears in front of him. Then he said modestly, this atmospheric shield is also named by me just now. It's mainly because I used it this way before, and I haven't thought of a name yet. As he said that, he formally wrote the name atmospheric shield on this paper, and then sent it to Guanmin in front of him. He said, please review it, Professor. Guanmin was numb. It's not that he was surprised that Nanling came up with a paper on the spot. After all, if Nanling already had the stock, it wouldn't be surprising to be able to do this. The key is that he had never heard of the names of the 3 new ink techniques involved in this paper, so they must be brand new. If they were all done by Nanling, then he could be sure that the talent of the young man in front of him would be outstanding even 1,000 years ago. Chapter 197 Bullies and Lackeys. Nanling wanted to talk more with the old professor. After all, Professor Guanmin seemed to be easy to talk to. But he didn't expect to receive a call from Fan. Xiaonan, come quickly. The boss issued a call, so what else could he do? Of course, he would go out immediately. Nanling could only show his paper and apologize to Guanmin. Sorry, Professor, I have something else to do, so I'll leave first. Guanmin looked up with a sense of loss, but he could only see Nanling unfolding her wingsuit and flying. He shook his head helplessly and said to himself, what a pity. He really thought this was a good seedling. Nanling responded to Fanny while sending a message to Motowask. Asking Fanny is like asking a blind man, but if he asks Mo, he will definitely get the most detailed answer. She is Fanny's old rival. When she saw Fanny coming back this semester, she couldn't help but bring people to provoke her. Look, Thongchi and I are both supporting her. Nanling instantly understood that Fanny felt that the people around her were not numerous enough, so she quickly asked Nanling to come to help. He just felt unlucky at the time. How did he encounter such a thing? Nanling asked at the time. Do you have any requirements for my appearance? Mo paused for a moment and said, just don't embarrass us, if possible, be more handsome. Nanling came to the coordinates given by Mo in an instant, and then saw a group of people fighting each other. Have they already started fighting? He took a quick glance and saw Fan arriving on the body of an unlucky girl, shooting left and right, and her little fists raining down. Nanling was a little anxious at the time. He wanted to make a handsome appearance, but Boss Fan couldn't wait to fight with others. Looking around, he saw 5 or 6 people lying on the ground with burnt bodies. Well, it was indeed Fanny's work. Come to think of it, she is already in the Jindan stage, and she must be walking sideways in this school. But the boss had already done everything, so what else could Nanling, a little brother, do? So he looked around and saw a group of people rushing over aggressively. Stop right now, you daring dead girl! The person yelled. Nanling's eyes lit up at that moment, and he came alive. He fell directly from the sky, landing in front of the group of people who came, and then mobilized the spiritual power in the spiritual furnace to suddenly erupt into a terrifying storm. The eldest lady is doing things, and those who are not related to me, get out of here. He wanted to be more handsome, but somehow he felt like a lackey. Mo slapped his forehead at this time, and he felt like a weak groan. But Nanling has already started to work. The storm he released was extremely strong, which was based on his recent understanding of that Tao. It was a spiritual storm formed by using wind spiritual power to drive natural airflow. and this wind spiritual power also took the violent and tearing side. The effect shown at this time was that the dozen people who came were all blown to the ground or even rolled over if they were not careful. Nanling felt that he was definitely qualified as a lackey. Fanny shouted enthusiastically, "Well done, shonen, give me a little more time, I have to fix this woman's face." When did Fanny speak so elegantly? Nanling laughed. As a result, a flash of fire appeared in front of him, and he saw that the person in front of him actually cast a spell on him. Nanling didn't feel anything special in his heart, because he felt that these spells were weak at a glance. Of course, this is not the case. Nanling's understanding of spells and spiritual power has surpassed the current realm. In his opinion, the entry of a spell is that spiritual power can evolve and drive natural properties to play a role. For example, the burning of a flame may be just the high temperature and brightness simulated by the fire spiritual power at first, but then it causes the burning of a real flame. From this aspect, the fire spiritual power actually feels like a fuel. At this time, Nanling had a clear view of the incoming fire spell and had a way to deal with it in his mind. He suddenly slapped his palm, and the air that had been emptied of oxygen pressed up with overwhelming force. Then, all these fire spells were extinguished in front of this oxygen-free air wall, and this round of attack was useless. There is no doubt that Nanling won this time by cleverness. At this time, the leader was very angry and shouted, "Asshole, do you know who we are?" Nanling was a little panicked at the time, but then he changed his mind. Even if he is a bit shot, so what? At worst, he can be expelled from this school, which is just what he wants. This broken school has to charge money to study spells, and there are not many good things to learn. So he said calmly, "I'm a freshman this year. You are not teachers, right?" The man was speechless for a moment. How can he talk to him? He can't even deal with a freshman. At this time, seeing that the leader was about to get serious and show his real skills, Mo could only bite the bullet and walk out and say, "Xiaonan, don't step back. They are the disciplined teachers of the Commander Academy." Nanling said "oh" when he heard it, and then stepped back and didn't attack. Then Mo said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Zhuowei, he didn't mean it." But Zhuowei was not willing to let it go. He said, "Students who attack teachers will be expelled." However, at this moment, a fiery red figure came and punched Zhuowei on the forehead. Good guy, this punch directly knocked off his helmet, making him dizzy and bruised. Fanny blew her fist and said, "This is called an attack. Shonen was just blowing wind to you. What do you want to do to me?" The brutal and domineering attitude was revealed. Nanling got excited when he heard that. He immediately rubbed his hands and said, "So, he is going to fire me. If I don't really hit him twice, I will be at a disadvantage." Fanny also understood immediately and said, "That's right, I will be fired too. If I just hit him with one punch, won't I be at a disadvantage?" Then he went up and said, "Come on, shonen, hold him down. I will hit him twice more to vent my anger." This is really a bully and a lackey, which frightened people. Zhuowei's face turned green at the time. He suddenly realized one thing. What can he do to Fanny? If he really dared to fire Fanny, then the old father of Fanny's family, the madman named Gichen, would definitely come to their house the next day and beat up their dean. To be honest, more and more people are now finding this father and daughter difficult and helpless. Gichen was originally the commander of the Chiling Corps, and he had countless students and former officials. In addition, the Gi family was forced to relieve Gichen of his position as the fleet commander due to some external pressure, which was already at debt. In addition, Fanny's golden elixir was broken before, and no one knew what happened. This made everyone feel helpless in the face of the crazy Gichen, for fear that he would think that Fanny's golden elixir was broken by them, and then they would be guilty of fighting back when Gichen came to the door. After all, attacking the younger generation has violated the iron law of the ancient domain. Up to now, Fanny has completely become a little bully who is rampant, and only some people at the same age can make trouble with her in the name of competition. But this trouble, the female pig-head lying next to her ended up like this. No one expected that Fanny would secretly practice the golden elixir again a few months later. Even if this kind of thing was known to others, Fanny would be able to be more unscrupulous in the ancient domain. Fortunately, at this time, Mo was holding one of them in each hand, and said with a tired look on her face, "That's enough, both of you, stand still." Fanny immediately stood still, and Nanling also stood still obediently. At this time, she was the only one who could hold Fanny's reins. But she was really tired. It was already more tiring to just wipe Fanny's ass, and now she had to wipe Fanny's lackey's ass. And unfortunately, this lackey was her husband. Chapter 198. Immortal guest heat. Nanling was sitting under a training ground building, and he was still confused about how the situation had progressed to this point. Thinking back now, the woman who was beaten into a pig head suddenly woke up, and then said in grief and anger, "Fanny, what's the point of bullying others with your cultivation? Do you dare to compete with me in the galaxy Immortal?" Then the disciplined teacher who was beaten was forgotten, and a group of onlookers immediately fanned the flames. With Fanny nodding proudly in agreement, they were surrounded and came to the training ground. Nanling was really confused about this sudden turn of events, but then he could confirm one thing, that is, this galaxy Immortal is very popular in the upper class of the ancient domain, at least in the place where the upper class children gather in the Chugyu Academy. Especially at the moment when the Galaxy Immortal Virtual War Competition Ancient Domain trial was about to be held, the entire academy was already undercurrent. Usually, this topic is the most talked about among a few friends, and now Fanny and her rivals have just heated up the atmosphere that was still somewhat suppressed. So Nanling didn't feel strange when he saw the people gathering around him. They all came to join in the fun. Liji and Hongshu were called over. Liji was fine, but Hongshu felt extremely helpless. He had a headache now and realized that his work might not be easy to complete. Then both sides prepared to start. Fanny called Nanling over and said, "Xiaonan, how about you let me be the chief this time?" She negotiated in a flattering way. Nanling said very tactfully, "Of course, Boss Fanny, you can do whatever you like." Hongshu, who was preparing to have a good fight, frowned when he saw this. He turned his head and looked at Mo and said, "Don't you care about this young man?" Mo asked, ? She didn't know what to say. Thongchip thought she didn't understand what he meant, so he emphasized, "Look at this young man, he is certainly talented, but don't you think he is too close to the eldest lady and has shown the temperament of a jester?" Mo was helpless. She knew it, how could she not know it? But what could she do? She said, "But the jester you're talking about is my husband." Thongchip's eyes widened as if struck by lightning. It must be said that Fanny and Mo are actually very outstanding and likable girls. It's just that Fanny's noble status made Thongchip dare not think too much, so after knowing Mo, he would inevitably put some thoughts on her. But what did he hear now? He never thought that the woman in front of him, who was like a goddess in his heart, was already taken, and was taken by that lackey. He simply couldn't describe his mood. Mo's mouth curled up secretly, and she felt that the role of her husband had been fully demonstrated. How many troubles had he blocked for her? Fanny got her wish and became the chief warrior of this game. Nanling thought that she would follow her temper and replace all resources with combat machines to follow her. But she unexpectedly chose the same resource allocation as Nanling, and then the first thing she did was to summon Nanling as the second general. This moment of tacit understanding made Nanling know what to do next. He took over the operation of the entire base very consciously, while Fanny rushed out without hesitation to find her opponent. The other people in the Zhuoxia army were hurt by Fanny's tricky operation. She was able to think of such a best of both worlds method. She really deserves to be Fanny. In fact, this is the most appropriate state for the Zhuoxia army. It not only takes Fanny's face into consideration, but also can bring into play Nanling's strongest tactical ability to lead the overall situation. It is undeniable that Nanling's tactical ability has been well demonstrated in many attempts last night, even Thongxi is convinced. When Nanling was operating the base, all production machinery was started, all resources were allocated in the most reasonable way, and energy utilization was also at its best. As a result, materials accumulated at a very fast speed, and then were built into various necessary facilities. Nanling's first thing was of course to organize the defense line. But this time the defense line was modular, and it was not very tight in one go. At this time, Fanny once again lived up to everyone's expectations and found the opponent. Or rather, she ran into the opponent's scouting machine. Of course, Fanny rushed up and cut it directly with a sword, and then directly followed the direction of the scouting machine. From this time on, Fanny's battle with the opponent began very violently. There was a three-dimensional projection in the hall of the entire training building that projected the battle situation of both sides. Everyone was fascinated by the quick double warrior routine of the Zhuoxia side. Then Nanling looked at the battle situation in front of him, and simply suspended the organization of the main base defenser. Instead, after accumulating a wave of resources, he summoned the three Shiliji in advance. Without saying anything, Liji took the resources assigned to her and set off, and then went to the place she had chosen. Opening a branch base. This operation made everyone exclaim again, which was definitely a huge inspiration. Everyone realized one thing, that is, although the initial compact machinery is important, if all production machinery is chosen, the resource and energy advantages can be maximized at the beginning. After the resource led, it is a step-by-step led. Especially when the opponent actually had no way to deal with Fanny alone, and as the compact machinery dispatched by Nanling's main base joined Fanny, the opponent was inevitably dragged into the quagmire by Fanny. At this time, it seemed that the two sides were still in a balance, but in fact, the military strength of the Vuoxia side was even weaker, and it was completely due to Fanny's pre-war command that the gap was eliminated. But everyone knew that the Vuoxia Legion had won, because their second base was developing without hindrance. Not long after, Nanling summoned Mo and Thongshi in one breath and pulled out all 5 generals. Then the compact machinery accumulated and the second base was divided into 2 parts. One part was led by Thongshi to encircle the enemy's main force in the middle of the battle with Fan. The other part was slightly smaller in number, but all were heavy assault machines, led by Mo to rush directly to the enemy's main base. Thongshi took the lead, and the enemy's front line was immediately in danger. The enemy's main base was naturally very surprised by this, and then directly sent the last force of the base to try to support the front line. The onlookers outside naturally shook their heads when they saw this scene, knowing that the Vuoxia army had won. Sure enough, the next moment, Mo had already swept the opponent's base with a crushing momentum, and the war ended just like that. Everyone thought about it and felt that the victory and defeat of both sides had been determined from the beginning. Even if there were not 2 bases producing at the same time, it would be the same. Because from the beginning to the end, the Vuoxia army had been using fewer resources to exchange for the opponent's more resources. Smart people had begun to secretly wonder how they should deal with the tactics of the Vuoxia army if they were to face such tactics. However, they felt that there was no solution. Because in their opinion, the strongest point of this tactic is that the Vuoxia army has Fanny, and Fanny's consumption and containment capabilities on the front line are too strong. At this time, Fanny, who had won, laughed and said, "It's just like this, not much different from the human computer we played last night. Killing people and destroying their hearts is nothing more than this." The girl on the opposite side, who had been beaten into a pig's head by physics, suddenly went crazy. "Come again, come again. Fanny, I must beat you, do you dare to come again?" Chapter 199. House and car. Facing the crazy and unyielding attitude of her old rival, Fanny showed enough generosity. She said, "Nesogyu, I have already beaten you twice today, what else do you want?" Nesogyu had recovered from her pig-head state at this time. After all, appearance is a woman's life. She should have dealt with it in the small compartment just now. She said angrily, "Fanny-gyu, let's play another round. If I lose, I will lose you a luxury flying boat with an inner space driving license." Fanny nodded indifferently and then started another round. This time, the Vuoxia Legion started the same as before. After Fanny summoned Nanling, she rushed out. Nanling was paying attention to the battle situation on Fanny's side while developing the base and arranging the defense line step by step. However, not long after, Fanny shouted, "They are desperate, what should we do?" Nanling said without raising his head, "Take them around in a circle, and be careful not to be beaten." He continued to arrange defenses. Fanny was being chased outside. Finally, she couldn't hold on any longer and was about to die heroically. Anyway, she believed that she had delayed for so long, and Nanling would definitely be able to arrange the base defenser. As a result, when she was about to die, the word victory had already appeared. The speed of this game was astonishing. But in fact, after Nanling found that Fanny could barely hold on, he did not hesitate to use all his resources to manufacture compact machines, and took all the production machines to attack the opponent's base in one go. The opponent's base was empty and could not withstand his formation at all, so a wave of counterattacks directly pushed the opponent's base flat. The speed at which this game ended also brought great inspiration to everyone. The commander of the Vuoxia army was amazing. Even if Fanny couldn't hold on and sacrificed in the previous game, it would not change the outcome of the Vuoxia army stealing the home and winning. The key to this outcome was Nanling's 2 generals at the beginning. Everyone has gradually seen the advantages of having 2 generals at the beginning, and the operating space has suddenly increased a lot. Fanny has lost interest in that Gunisha. She stretched and perfectly showed her proud curves, and then said lightly, "Where is your flying boat?" Gunisha came out from another compartment, stared at Fanny fiercely, and transferred her luxurious flying boat to Fanny without any care. Then she said, "Let's play again. If I lose again this time, I will give you a real estate." Fanny didn't care much at first, but then she realized something and said, Okay, I want the 4th district of Kulyu. Nanling was stunned. What is this for? Gynesha said coldly. Fight another round and make me lose convincingly. Then you can buy any real estate you want and buy it for you. Nanling sighed. The life of this rich person is really simple and unpretentious. Fana said readily. Okay, this time I want you to lose convincingly. She also became serious. Then in the preparation space, she asked, Xiaonan, why don't you be the chief this time and operate according to their actual situation? Nanling laughed and said, what are you worried about, Boss Fanny? Just do it as before. They are so weak, what can go wrong? Fanny was very happy to hear this, and she said, ha ha ha, if you were not my dearest little brother, I would really be reluctant to give you to Mo. Nanling. ... This made him scared. Mo glared at Fanny speechlessly, too lazy to pay attention to the girl's crazy talk. Fanny's opening was the same as before. However, when she found the opponent's base this time, she was confused by the scene in front of her. Because the opponent actually started to shrink and build defenses directly, and didn't come out. Fanny was so angry that she cursed. Good Gynesha, you are cheating. As the opponent's chief, Gynesha snorted and said, come over if you have the guts. Fanny felt that she was a fool to come to fight when the opponent had built enough defensive facilities. As a result, Nanling said, Boss Fanny, just stay there and don't let them go out. Let me develop. Fanny was helpless when she heard this, knowing that she probably didn't have much room to play this time. But Nanling said again, don't worry, there is room for you to play. He changed his tactics temporarily, and the 3 generals were replaced by Thongship. He allocated resources and production machinery, and then said, go to their defense range and open a sub-base. You know how to do it. Thongship was numb when he heard this. This operation was too inhumane, blocking the sub-base directly at the opponent's door. But it sounds very exciting. So he took the resources and swaggered to set up a sub-base at the opponent's door, and then quickly organized defensa with the limited resources he brought. This defensa is actually very simple. But the problem is that Gynesha has put a lot of resources on defensa, and if she wants to attack, she seems to be unable to do it. So even if Gynesha finally chose to attack, she was still resisted by Fanny and Thongship relying on simple defensive facilities. This caused Gynesha to be seriously frustrated. As a last resort, she chose to develop her own base. She wanted to summon all her subordinates, and then have a fair fight with Fanny. However, when she had the resources to summon the second subordinate, Nanling had already summoned Mo as the 4th seed, and asked her to open a sub-base at the other end of the battlefield. When Gynesha was fully developed, summoned the 4th subordinate and accumulated a lot of troops to prepare for a wave, Thongship had already managed his base as solid as a rock, waiting for the opponent to crash into him. Then Li Ji was also summoned, and Nanling immediately handed over the authority of the main base to Li Ji, letting her take full responsibility for the logistics in the rear, and he took enough resources to open a 3rd sub-base. In this way, the 3 sub-bases were like a Chinese character, which clamped Gynesha's base invisibly, making her unable to advance or retreat. Its base development space was also greatly restricted. On the contrary, the Juoxia Legion occupied 80% of the entire asteroid belt in this virtual battlefield. Although Gynesha's army had 5 people, they could not fully exert their strength in a small space. The 5 people of the Juoxia army fully exerted their computing power and expertise until the final general attack. In the direction of the 3 sub-bases, huge mechanical armies appeared in each of them, surrounding Gynesha's army base in all directions. The defending side still has the advantage, and the consumption ratio of the 2 sides in the battle can almost reach 1 to 2. However, the area occupied by the Juoxia army is vast, the materials are abundant, and the production capacity is more than 4 times that of the opponent. Therefore, the 2 sides launched an extremely huge and tragic large-scale army attrition war, and finally the Juoxia army won with an unsuspected advantage. In Gynesha's desperate counterattack, the military power consumption of the Juoxia army can be said to be almost 2.5 times that of the opponent, but when this round ended, the military power of the Juoxia army did not seem to have much consumption or change. And the victory of this round also made the bystanders around feel heavy and suffocated. Although this round can be said to have been fought to the end, the onlookers knew from the beginning that Juoxia Corps would win. Because Juoxia Corps has a top operator Nanlin, a top defender Thongship, and a top attacker Fana. In comparison, most balance and Li Ji's reconnaissance and logistics capabilities were not shown much. But even so, everyone in Chugyu Academy has already realized that this is a very top team. Chapter 200. Can you graduate without being careful? Ha, I feel happy when I think of that Nesugu's face. This Batwoman has been fighting with me for everything since she was a child. When my father lost the fleet, she kept mocking me. This time, she really got her way. Fanny looked very happy. Nanling was flattering her, and even looked at her lovingly and distressedly, obviously feeling that Fanny had been wronged. At this time, they were opposite Mo's small building, separated by an emerald green river. This was also that trophy that Fanny won from Nesugu. The luxurious flying boat was parked in the open space next to it, which was also her trophy. The flying shuttle was extremely luxurious and had space for more than 7 people. More importantly, people like Nanling and Mo who had a special flying certificate could drive this flying boat to take people to and from the major celestial bodies within the scope of the Chugyu star. This was its preciousness. Anyway, Fanny now had a new car and a new house, and the house was right opposite Mo's, which made her very satisfied. She also invited Liji to live with her. The 4 of them simply lived across the river in 2 small buildings facing each other. To be honest, Fanny was actually a little unhappy recently. Because her followers, playmates, and best friends since childhood didn't like to be with her so much recently. Even when they were with her, they would be absent-minded thinking about other things. She found that everything seemed to have changed a little. Mo's heart was no longer just thinking about her own affairs. She felt a little uncomfortable and wanted to change this situation. At first she thought about changing it from another aspect, but now she felt that she had found a good way. Move next door to Mo and be Mo's neighbor, so that she can be with Mo again. So she slept very soundly that night. But the next day Nanling did not go with them to Taikuno. 5. If you ask why? It's because one can study at home. Mo was quite helpless about this. She had heard that the schoolwork at the Cultivation Academy was relaxed, but she didn't expect it to be so relaxed. However, she was not worried about Nanling staying at home peacefully, because she knew that Nanling was not the kind of person who would mess around. If he stayed at home, he would really stay at home obediently and would not go anywhere. Nanling was alone and quiet, which made him more content. He began to read the coursework of the Cultivation Academy through the Wisdom Core. His eyes quickly scanned and skipped all the so-called spell design techniques. He didn't care about such things at all. Moreover, these coursework materials were actually very old, and it seemed that they had not been recompiled for some years. Nanling couldn't help but sigh. The Cultivation Academy of the Chugyu Academy was actually dead in name only. He looked through it again, and finally stopped at the course that he valued the most and the only one he thought was valuable. That was the history of the development of cultivation. Nanling read this coursework carefully and found that it existed even longer and had not been changed for more than 200 years. This seemed to mean that for more than 200 years, the cultivators of this era had not made any theoretical progress in the fundamental level of cultivation. Nanling read the coursework carefully and found that it mentioned many reference materials. He immediately entered the college's database and wanted to browse the reference materials in this area. He was prepared to spend a lot of money. As a result, he was shocked to find that there were quite a lot of reference materials, but most of them were free. Because the earliest of these reference materials were thousands of years ago, and because most people had no interest in these materials, they were gradually forgotten. Nanling was happy to read these materials. Because who else in the world was like him, with doubts about the practice methods of this era? And these materials about the history of the development of cultivation are what Nanling is most concerned about now. He saw that the beginning of cultivation was actually an accident of an experiment. A scientist discovered a dark energy called spiritual power. When spiritual power was first discovered, it was not actually used in the human body, but was carried and used by machinery. As the research progressed, people discovered that this spiritual power was very similar to the practice and spiritual power mentioned in some ancient books, which triggered a rapid progress in the research of this power. However, this kind of development was full of blood and cruelty. Because it was an extremely evolutionary era, if you didn't make progress, you would be eliminated. So many people had to cooperate with high-tech facilities to experiment on their own bodies. This process was not to use living people or death row prisoners for human experiments, but the cultivators at the time tried to use the best conditions to experiment on their own bodies. They kept trying to make their bodies accommodate more spiritual power, and using external equipment to assist in control was a natural product of thinking. Nanling let out a long breath. This part of the history of cultivation only involves the foundation building part, but there is no relevant information about the golden elixir part. In fact, this is understandable, and the part above the golden elixir must have been hidden by the major clans. But even so, Nanling benefited a lot. In particular, he believed that in this era, with scientific and technological means, the secrets of the body were really studied thoroughly enough. He confirmed his own perceptions and actually had the idea of changing his foundation building spirit formation. But he didn't rush to do it. He had to think carefully and master all the knowledge before making plans. In fact, by today, the Qun Feng Shui he practiced had already been changed beyond recognition. This is a fundamental skill. If he submits his experience in practice, who knows what the result will be? Nanling was quite curious. But thinking of this, he couldn't help but think of the atmospheric shield paper he submitted to Professor Guanmin. He casually sent a message. "Professor, my paper was passed." He waited for a while and didn't care when there was no reply. He took the fishing gear and prepared to go fishing again. As a result, he just sat down by the river and saw Guanmin reply. "You wrote all 3 new spells in a paper, and now I am splitting them for you." Nanling asked in surprise. "Can refraction and air shield be used?" The old professor replied. "Why can't it be used? Refraction has reached the threshold of elementary spells, because it has multiple functions and is even not worse than medium spells in some cases. The air shield is firmly in the category of medium-level spells. Although there are some similar wind spells, you obviously have your own reasons. The air shield is still in the category of medium-level spells, but it can barely reach the threshold of high-level spells, especially since it seems to have unlimited potential." The old professor spoke for a long time, and then concluded. "Congratulations, Nanling. You don't have to do anything. You can automatically graduate from the Cultivation Academy in 5 years." On the second day of enrollment, he met the graduation standards. The only imperfect thing is that he still has to wait for enough years to get the certificate. Nanling thought of Mo's experience and asked, "Can I learn knowledge from other colleges?" The old professor said, "You are still enrolled in our college, but your situation is a special genius. The school specifically takes care of you and allows you to choose another database to study by yourself until you complete the credits." Nanling nodded repeatedly when he heard this. This is exactly what he needs. But just when he wanted to ask something, someone called out from behind. "Hey, why are you fishing again? Come on, I brought good wine and good meat this time. Can you cook pork?" Nanling turned around and saw him coming to visit again. This time he not only brought wine, but also a big piece of pork. "That's thoughtful." Nanling smiled and replied, "Just wait and see me show you my skills again. P.S. My job is going to change recently, there will be a lot of handovers and learning, try to keep up with the rhythm of 3 updates." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.